My name is John Kelly. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. And my sobriety date is September the 4th, 99. And for that, I am very, very grateful. I'm just going to kind of rant for like 5 minutes to get the blood going. And I want to thank you for having us here. And you know, keep Joe in your prayers. But we feel very honored to be here. And even though we're in Kansas and you beat UT, I mean, that's okay. That aside, you know, we love doing this. We do a little deal in Dallas. We're from the Primary Purpose Group in Dallas, Texas, and I believe we're coming up on, 19 years? 19 years. And just to give you a little rundown of how we get where we're at, I mean, both of us are first-class knucklehead alcoholics. I mean, we are passed each other in and out of AA through the decade of the 90s. I mean, I would be getting in, he'd be going out, and it was just back and forth. Everybody was done with us. I mean, families, judges, you name it. And it's pretty amazing that we're here today. And I'm just kind of in awe about this whole thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to go through the big book, and that's what we do. We have a little meeting we do in Dallas every Sunday. We've been doing it for over 6 years, and we start from the title page, and we go through it line by line. It takes us about 15 weeks to do the first 7 chapters, and that's kind of what we're going to do here today. And rather than going into all the history and all that stuff, we'll just kind of interject that as we go along, and he's going to kick us off, and we'll just see where this takes us.
All right. My name is Michael Kelly. I'm a grateful recovered alcoholic. Thanks to this book right here and a sponsor who knew what was inside it and a loving God of my own understanding, I haven't found it necessary to pick up a drink since June 13th of the year 2000, and that's an absolute miracle for a guy like me. I'm not a newcomer to AA. I picked up my first desired ship back in 1985. Spent a lot of years in and out of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and took a beating. But it's quite interesting. We're just going to get right into this thing. And the one thing I found out when I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous the last time in 2000 was an interesting finding. I don't know if you've ever opened up a big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and looked at that very first page. But have you ever noticed it's blank? That's how much I knew about staying sober. That was it. Everything I had tried failed miserably. Every plan I came up with failed. And the neatest thing is thank God on a Tuesday on June 13th, I walked into a place called Alcoholics Anonymous. We flipped the next page and here we are. How about that? Finally I found a place that knew what the problem was and knew what the solution was and got me from the problem to the solution. And if you turn the next page to this book, you get to the title page, which is titled Alcoholics Anonymous, and it says the story of how many thousands of men and women have recovered from alcoholism. And it's an interesting line there. For those of you who've spent some time in Alcoholics Anonymous, they introduced a new word to us here. Because from 1985 to about 1998, I was convinced by people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous that you were always going to be recovering from alcoholism. You're never going to recover. It was stated like a fact. And if you think about that, you look at that statement that you hear inside the walls of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that's like, could you imagine if you broke your leg and you went to a hospital, and a doctor looked at you and said, that's a nasty break. And I hate to break it to you, but you're always going to be recovering from this broken leg. You're never going to recover. How much hope does that give one? And it's interesting because we get into this first page and they describe themselves as recovered from alcoholism. And right away it takes a lot of the controversy right out of the equation. They tell you right there it's just an incorrect statement to say you're always going to be recovering from alcoholism. And they actually offer you up some hope. And you start going through this book and you go past the table of contents. And I don't know about you, but is there any big book readers in this room? Did you read a lot of books? When I read a book, I always thumbed through the beginning of a book and I worked myself right up to page 1. And I just assumed the information prior to that was something, let's get back to at a later time. But there's some very important information in the beginning of this book, and starting out with the preface, they really tell you what you have in front of you. And if you look at that second full paragraph in the preface, it really lays out what you have in front of you. You know, it says, because this book has become the basic text of our society and has helped such a large number of alcoholic men and women to recovery, there exists a sentiment against any radical changes being made in it. Therefore, the first portion of this volume describing the AA recovery program has been left untouched in the course of its revisions made for both the second and third editions, and if you have a fourth edition, it includes that. That's a mountain of information they just laid at our feet. You know, first of all, this book right here is not a novel. It's, I assumed you read it once, you set it on a shelf, and you recommended, hey, John, you ought to read this book. It's really a good read. And right away they're telling you that is not what you have in front of you. You've got a textbook. And the only way I can go back and understand what a textbook is, in my mind, is go back to when you were in school. Take yourself back to when you were in math class. You walked into a classroom, there was a teacher up front. She had a stack of mathematics books. She handed one out to everyone. And what you did is you started in the beginning of the book and you learned how to add. Then you moved into the next chapters and they taught you how to subtract. So you found out 1 + 1 = 2. Then the later chapter showed you how to prove it. 2 - 1 = 1. And each chapter presented you with a problem and a solution and a course of action how to get there. And you couldn't just start out in the middle of the book. Could you imagine if they started us out on long division? We would have been lost immediately. So each chapter built on the previous chapter. So what we have here is a textbook, and it's no different than the math book. What we're looking at is we've got a book that's presented us with a problem, alcoholism. It's presented us with a solution, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's presented us with a course of action on how to get from the problem to the solution. And that's what we have, a textbook. And then the most amazing thing is they tell us that since this book has been written, it has been left untouched. So let's find out when the book was written. So if you flip the page, you look at the foreword of the first edition, and this is what really qualifies this book. It's going to qualify this textbook, and it says the foreword to the first edition. This is the foreword as it appeared in the first printing of the first edition in 1939. So now that we know this book was published in 1939, here we are at the end of 2006, and this book has been left untouched. Up to this point, they have not found a way to add to it or take away from it to make it any better. It has been left untouched. That's an amazing thing. That's a pretty powerful statement. So now we're going to find out who wrote this textbook that has stayed so strong. And it says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. Anybody notice that word again? It's quite interesting. It kind of eliminates the debate. We're 4 or 5 pages into this thing, and here we are. We've got 100 men and women who have written a book, and they're making a bold statement. It says, we have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So what is that seemingly hopeless state of mind and body? The best way I've ever heard it put was, I can't get through the day without drinking, and that drink is killing me. Think about it. What a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body that is. Alcoholism as we know it. So now we know who wrote this book. It wasn't one person. Some people will say, well, Bill Wilson wrote this book. Well, you know what? Go back to the original manuscript. It's not the same, is it? Some things were changed. The 100 got together and said, okay, we've got the core of what you came up with. Now we're going to get it to where we want it to print. So these 100 people got together, and now they're going to tell you why they wrote this book. It says to show other alcoholics precisely how we recovered is the main purpose of this book. Can you imagine? What does the word precisely mean? They wrote down exactly what they did to go from a helpless, hopeless alcoholic to a recovered alcoholic. And thank God they did. Because could you imagine if they would have relied on word of mouth? Well, let's go by word of mouth. What did we find out about the recovered and the recovering thing? Word of mouth already removed the word recovered from Alcoholics Anonymous, as we know it in the rooms today. So what they did is they knew they had something so important. And can you imagine? I mean, people have been trying to help alcoholics for years. Since man first crushed grapes, people were trying to fix us. You know, they were giving us hobbies, giving us all these sorts of things to somehow try to get us to solve this problem that we were dealing with. But these people said, you know what? We found something that worked so wonderfully that, you know, we're going to write down exactly what we did. So if someone else comes up, all they have to do is do precisely what we did, and they're going to get what we got. Pretty amazing statement. Now it says, for them, we hope these pages will prove so convincing that no further authentication will be necessary. So let's look at that line. If I have a drinking problem, this statement says, all I need is this document right here. I don't need any further authentication, and that's where some controversy comes in. Have you ever walked in? I remember walking into Alcoholics Anonymous, and there they had books, and they said, okay, you want to buy a book? And they had a little 12 and 12 in front of us, and they had a big book. I don't know about you, but which one did you reach for? Give me the skinny one. You know, I love the 12 and 12, but we've got to understand what the 12 and 12 is. And if anyone has spent any time in the 12 and 12 and studied it, there's some interesting information in the beginning of that book. You go back to page 17, and it says, the book Alcoholics Anonymous became the basic text of the fellowship and still is. It says, this present volume proposes to broaden and deepen the understanding of the 12 steps as written in the earlier work. The 12 and 12 is someone looking back at 15 years sober, reflecting back on what the steps meant to him at that point. You know, and he made a bold statement. He said, if you want to work the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, get the big book, the basic text. So no, I don't need any further authentication. Then it's going to tell us, we think this account of our experiences will help everyone to better understand the alcoholic. Many do not comprehend that the alcoholic is a very sick person. The most amazing thing is this book was not only written for the alcoholic. You know, we're the people that say, you know, what are you complaining about? I'm only hurting myself. We think it's all about us. Well, guess what? We found out after we sobered up that we devastated lives all around us. I mean, we were walking around pulling pins out of hand grenades all day long. Everyone's life around us was touched by alcoholism. Well, not only is this book written for the alcoholic, but it's written for everyone who has been touched by an alcoholic. Help them better understand. And the thing is, the statement says to help someone better understand. Because a non-alcoholic is never going to fully understand an alcoholic. And I can give you an example. If anyone's given birth in this room, you can tell me all about it. You can explain to me in detail. You can show me videos. You could bring me in a birthing room. I'm never going to fully understand what it's like to give birth to a child, nor will I ever. You can help me better understand it, but I'm never going to fully understand it. And that's what we're going to do here, is we're going to help people who are not an alcoholic to better understand alcoholism. And there's chapters devoted strictly for them, to the wives, the loved ones of Alcoholics Anonymous, the family afterward, the employer. So there's information for them. And then the last sentence, which I love dearly, it says, and besides, we are sure that our way of living has its advantages for all. They had no idea what they were writing. They couldn't have. Not only does it have advantages for the people out on the roads now that I'm not drinking, my coworkers, my family members. Yes, this way of life has its advantages for all, but let's look at it. Over 200 fellowships with very specific problems that had nothing to do with alcoholism came to Alcoholics Anonymous and said, you've done wonderfully with this problem of alcoholism with your program. May we borrow your program, and we'd like to apply your program of action to our problem to see if we get the same solution that you have. So now we have over 200 fellowships that have nothing to do with drinking. Emotions Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous. You look at it, the list goes on, that have nothing to do with alcoholism. How true could that statement be? Our way of living does have its advantages for all. Now if you flip the page, you go one line down from the top, it says the only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. Anybody notice something about that statement? Anybody ever spent any time in the traditions before? That's almost our third tradition, isn't it? Almost. There's a very interesting word that was removed. And I had to ask the question, and my sponsor looked at me and he said, the problem is you don't know anything about being honest. That's probably why they removed it. And the fact of the matter is that's probably true. But if you look at it, they really knew what they were talking about back when they wrote this book. In order for this program to work, when I walk through this door, I have to have an honest desire to never pick up another drink as long as I live. And we ask the newcomer, are you done? Are you through? And everybody wants to say, yeah. But think about that. Through forever is a very long time. And we honestly have to ask ourselves, do you really want to be done for good and for all? And that's the catch, this whole thing. I have to have that honest desire to never pick up another drink as long as I live. There's the key to the membership of all of this. Now we're going to get into the forward of the second edition, and again, I'm just going to skim through because we have such limited time. But I love the forward to the second edition because it is just amazing. It gives us the history of what happened from 1939 to 1955. They're raffling off a second edition, and when that second edition was published, they wanted to go back and give a little history of how this thing came about and how they're doing and what happened in that period of time from the first edition to the second edition. And if you look at it as you flip through this, you turn to the next page, and you really get to see how this thing came about. And it's an amazing thing. Can you imagine? I love going back to the story of Bill on that broken down business trip in Akron, sitting in that hotel room. Very little money in his pocket, wondering how the heck he's ever even going to get home. And you start looking at this, and he's sitting in the hotel lobby, and he's here down the hallway. What's down the hall? A bar. And he can hear the people inside, the tinkling of the glasses, and his butt's falling off, and what a moment in time. Can you imagine? He's out on an island all by himself, and here he is. What does he do? He walks into the bar and he doesn't order a drink, he gets a roll of nickels. How about that? Walks over to the phone and he starts picking up that phone and starts making calls, going through that church directory, desperately trying to find another alcoholic to work with to save his butt. After the first or second failed call, could you imagine if he would have given up? But no, he stuck with it. Finally got a hold of the Cyberlings who knew Dr. Bob. You look at the history of it, before you know it, Dr. Bob agreed to give him 15 minutes. He walks up, Dr. Bob shaking like a leaf on a tree. He's saying, I only have a little time for you. And he says, I understand you look like you need a drink. And he spoke his language right there. That's where this thing began. That 15 minutes turned into till 2006, and this thing is still going on strong. And you look at the bottom of that page, and in just that little bit of history, it says, this seemed to prove that one alcoholic could affect another as no non-alcoholic could. It also indicated that strenuous work, one alcoholic with another, was vital to permanent recovery. What an amazing line right there. And it was strenuous work. Think about it. Bill stuck with it, making those phone calls, failed attempts, trying and trying. That whole 6 months as he was, prior to that moment, he was busting his butt working with other alcoholics and no one was staying sober. But thank God he was. Can you imagine? Vital to permanent recovery. Isn't that what we're here for? That honest desire to never pick up another drink as long as we live. And you look at that word vital, what does it mean? Vital, my heart is a vital organ. You take that away and guess what? I'm no longer living. You take away working with another alcoholic and I'm no longer going to stay sober. There's no reading between the lines there. You go on further and you look at the growth of AA, and it was very slow. What were they up to? By 1935, they had, 3 people? They're moving right along. By 1937, I think the documented numbers were about 40. By 39, when the book was published, they were up to 100, and some history books will actually tell you that they exaggerated a little. Who would have thought? Alcoholics exaggerating. But here nor there. Let's say they're up to 100 people by 1939. Growth was slow. But then you turn to the next page and you really see what happened to Alcoholics Anonymous to put us on the map. The first thing that happened was that article in the Liberty magazine. Numbers started shooting up. By 1939, we're up to 800 people. But what really, really put us on the map was the article Jack Alexander wrote for the Saturday Evening Post. Can you imagine? Here we've got a group of 800 or so alcoholics, and there's rumors going around. People are wondering, what is this thing going on? What do we have, another cult on our hands? And you look back, Saturday Evening Post and Jack Alexander, that was basically our 2020 and Barbara Walters of the day. He was going in to bust this thing wide open and find the dirt about what are they doing to these alcoholics. Well, the task at hand was to write an article on Alcoholics Anonymous, and he was thinking he was going to dig up some dirt, and before you knew it, he became one of our best friends of Alcoholics Anonymous. He wrote such a glowing article, he put us on the map. By the time that thing was published in the Saturday Evening Post, you look, by the close of 1941, we had 8,000 members. I mean, that growth spurt was amazing. Could you imagine putting 8,000 alcoholics in a room and this thing hadn't really found its direction yet? And everyone had an idea of how this thing was going to go. We should be doing this. We should be doing that. And thank God Bill knew from the history of what went wrong. Through the Washingtonians, where the Oxford groups had failed, they learned. And Bill knew that, you know what, we really need the traditions to hold us together. Without it, we could be as quick to go up and quick to go down as the Washingtonians, which they grew up fast and they went away just as fast in helping alcoholics. So that's when they came out with the 12 traditions. And thank God they did, because that's why we're here today. Without the traditions, who knows where Alcoholics Anonymous would be. By 1950, at the International Conference, they adopted the 12 traditions, and that's what holds us together. The steps are to the alcoholic. The traditions are to the group. That's what binds us together and keeps us strong. But you turn to the next page, and now we're going to get into the interesting part, and I'm about finished up. But if you look 5 lines down from the top, they do something amazing here. What they did is they wanted to find out how well they were doing from 1939 to 1955. How was Alcoholics Anonymous helping alcoholics? How well were they doing? And they went and they queried all of the groups, and they said, all right, give us your numbers. How are we doing so far? And if you look, it says of alcoholics who came to AA, and here's the hook, and really tried. 50% got sober at once and remained that way. 25% sobered up after some relapses, and among the remainder, those who stayed on with AA showed improvement. Now let's break this thing down. What do they mean? These people show up, get a desire chip, and just hang around? Well, if you go back to the history of early AA, that is not how it went down. You look at it, at the original AA group in Akron, they have 1 meeting a week. A new guy showed up there, he got a little hope, and he was brought upstairs, and he wasn't allowed back into that meeting unless he got a sponsor, started working the steps, and got busy. That's when he got to move back downstairs again. You know, and really tried meant do the work. Back in the day, it was, if you want to join us, let's get busy, let's get to work. If you don't, there's the door. Get busy. You know, it was plain and simple. It wasn't being harsh. It was, you know what? They knew what worked, and if you didn't want to do what we did, they didn't ask you to hang around. They were successful. Could you imagine? People walking in up to this point, half this room, all they had to do was get a sponsor, work the steps, get off their butt, and help another alcoholic. 50% got sober at once. Then the knuckleheads like John and I, who began the process, the job got more important, the girl got more important, all those other worldly things got more important, got distracted, went and got their butt handed to them one more time, came back and said, all right, what is this side of the room doing? Please show us. And then they were up to 75%. Now here's the scary part. Before I get into the scary part, you look back and there's actually groups in Cleveland and in Minneapolis that had documented over 90% success rate in that time frame. It's amazing. Amazing. Now let's look at modern day. Dallas Intergroup does something really interesting. It's a skewed number, but it's pretty accurate. It's really easy to tell how well we're doing today. Chip sales. 5 years ago, they sold 1,000 Desire chips. That would mean Today, at the end of the year, how many 5-year chips do you think they sold? You can argue with the numbers, but it's as accurate as you can get. In Dallas today, you have less than 5% chance of seeing 5 years. Documented. It's frightening. We're failing. Horribly. So what's changed? I don't know about you, but a 100-proof bottle of vodka, I don't think has really changed from a 100-proof bottle of vodka in 1939, has it? I also told you that the book hasn't changed since 1939. It hasn't. 1939, it's the same book as it is in 2006 when you buy a brand new 4th edition. Same book. Same program. Nothing's changed. So what's changed? Well, the only thing left is one thing, isn't it? The people inside these rooms have changed. We've allowed it to change. Instead of holding someone accountable and saying, either do the work or there's the door, we want to love them into sobriety. Keep coming back. It's okay. Relapse is part of recovery. We laugh, but guess what? People are dying left and right. Dying. And what's changed is we've got so far away from what works that that's what's changed. And it's frightening. It's scary. If you look at the next page, I'll get off my soapbox for a second. If you look at the next page, here it is. Upon therapy for the alcoholic himself, we surely have no monopoly. I'm not saying this is the only way to get sober. I'm not saying this is the only way to live sober. Salvation Army has been sobering up drunks long before Alcoholics Anonymous ever came about. Fact is true. Church is doing it too. But here's the thing. If everything you've tried has failed, the one thing that hasn't changed and works almost flawlessly, right back to look at how it works. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. If you haven't tried this yet, why not give it a shot? If you go to the forward to the 3rd edition, I'm going to shut it down with this. It says, each day somewhere in the world, recovery begins when one alcoholic talks with another alcoholic, sharing his experience, strength, and hope. And I'm going to pass it off to John.
All right. I am John Kelly. I'm an alcoholic. It's kind of weird being up here sitting down because we're usually standing up, and it's like, this is like the kinder, softer Michael Kelly. I'm going to get ramped up, okay? A lot of people in Dallas, I don't know about y'all, I don't know if y'all do those statistics here or whatever, but a lot of people in Dallas do not like us reading that stuff. They don't like us 50% then. How do you know then? I've seen emails, that these little chain emails going around. People getting really hacked off that we bring that stuff up. But we got to look at Alcoholics Anonymous. We're the outsiders. Big book thumpers are the outsiders in AA today. And it should be just the opposite. Right? I mean, they call us big book thumpers, big book Nazis. Our friends in Iceland, they call them the Taliban. People in Europe are real sketchy about using the word Nazi. They don't like using that. That page that he just read on the forward to the 2nd edition, that needs to wake us up. We're not doing good as a fellowship getting people sober today. I mean, it's sad. I mean, at least back in the day, half the people got sober right away. They got sober, they got busy, they got a sponsor, and they went to the hospital, they went to these places, and they found drunks, and they stuck together, and they got sober. My sponsor, the whole reason our group, Primary Purpose, got started, my sponsor sponsors Joe McQueenie, the first Joe McHugh of Joe and Charlie, right? That's how we got our group started 19 years ago. And we do one thing. We get into this program, and then we go out amongst our people and do this stuff. And it's just amazing that we're all sitting here today. And I'm going to start off on the doctor's opinion, and I'll interject a little history as we go along. But this is pretty amazing stuff. I mean, this doctor's opinion, they're giving us a little bit of credibility. Can you imagine if they wouldn't have had the doctor's opinion, it's just these guys' theory on how they stayed sober, right? Their experience on how they stayed sober. Now we got a little... If you ever get your hands on a 1st edition, a real 1st edition, you'll notice one thing. When they get to the end of the doctor's opinion, it says unnamed doctor or anonymous doctor, right? And I think when the 2nd edition came out, Silkworth was like, all right, y'all can use my name now. This is good stuff, But even he was kind of leery about putting his stuff on the line. And this guy that we're going to talk about is Dr. William Duncan Silkworth. right? And there's a great book out there. Go find it. You can get it at Amazon.com. But it's called The Little Doctor Who Loved Drunks. And he loved us. He loved us. He had an affinity for us. And there's some cool things going on at this period in history, right? Because we've got this Oxford movement, right? And they're doing first century Christianity, doing the book of James and Corinthians and all this stuff. And they've got this program of action that keeps them grounded. It's like this spiritual movement. And a group of them started helping out alcoholics, and they had some success, right? They had this program of action. But Dr. Bob's doing an Oxford group, and he's not staying sober, right? And about a few hundred miles away in New York, you've got this doctor, Dr. Silkworth, who loves drunks. And he works at this place called Towns Hospital, right? It's right off Central Park. The picture's back there. He worked with over 50,000 of us during his tenure at Towns Hospital. And he couldn't understand why is it, and we're going to get into it all in the meat of this, but he couldn't understand why is it that guy or that gal that comes into Towns Hospital back in the day who's drinking too much, right? They're going through some marital problems, or the business is failing, or they've had some issues in the past or whatever. They're drinking too much, and this person comes into that hospital and they counsel them, right? They talk to them about alcohol abuse, and they give them that hydrotherapy. You know what? I don't know what. We're clean drunks, I guess. They shoot us down hose us down with water. I don't know. And they lecture them, and they nurse them back to health, and they feed them properly, and this person understands what they know about alcoholism, scared to death. They leave the hospital, never to return. They chill. They moderate. They stop drinking altogether, or they just don't drink to excess anymore. Their life gets back on track. And then guys like me and Michael go to the same hospital, right? Get the same treatment, the same therapy, the same food, get the same lectures, and I leave that hospital in high hopes. In a short amount of time, I'm drinking again, and when I return to that hospital, I'm in far worse shape than the first time the doctor saw me. And man's been trying to answer that riddle since booze was invented. And there was another doctor, his name escapes me, he kind of had this little theory going, and Silkworth expanded upon it, and he came up with the theory that we're talking about. All right? But let's read what it says here in the book. It says, the doctor's opinion. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Credibility, right? Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of our members and have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician at a nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcoholic and drug addiction, gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. To whom it may concern, I have specialized in the treatment of alcoholism for many years. In late 1934, I attended a patient who, though he'd been a competent businessman of good earning capacity, was an alcoholic of a type I had come to regard as hopeless. And he's referring to Bill. Right? Bill is a hopeless alcoholic. In the course of his third treatment, Bill was also a knucklehead, right? He tried it, right? He went to Towns Hospital that first time. If you remember his story, we'll get into that the next hour, right? Bill thought, I've got it, knowledge, right? Bill, 3 treatments, right? Bill's a knucklehead. He leaves Towns Hospital, fares forth in high hopes, and he ends up there again, right? In the course of his third treatment, he acquired certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present his conceptions to other alcoholics, impressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others. I don't know if y'all are keeping track. There's a must. I spent the whole decade of the 80s and 90s, everybody telling me there ain't no must in the big book. Depending on where you start counting, there's like 67 of them, all right? And this is the third one so far, right? So this has become the basic of if you think about it, there's no must in the big book. And I take that, right? Here I am in the 80s trying to get sober, and they tell me there's no must. Keep coming back. And I'm taking these guys at face value, right? This is what I got to do, right? And then I get drunk, and they tell me I don't want it enough. Got to read the book. It's a textbook. We're going to study it over and over and over. It says, this man and 100 others have appeared to recover. I personally know scores of cases who were of the type with whom other methods had failed completely. I tried every other method there was. Going to church, doing good deeds for my mama, reading Tony Robbins books, doing some Tai Chi, eating better. Maybe if I just had the right workout program. Every method failed, right? These facts appear to be of extreme medical importance because of the extraordinary possibilities of rapid growth inherent in this group. They may mark a new epoch in the annals of alcoholism. These men may well have a remedy for thousands of such situations. You may rely absolutely on anything they say about themselves. Very truly yours, Dr. William D. Silkworth. Can you imagine a doctor writing that about you? You can add Jimmy Jack's doctor. You may rely absolutely on anything. My doctor's not writing that today. All right? But Silkworth wrote that about these guys, you know. So it says, the physician who at our request gave us this letter has been kind enough to enlarge upon his views in another statement which follows. In this statement, he confirms that what we who have suffered alcoholic torture must believe, that the body of the alcoholic is quite as abnormal as the mind. And he goes on to say, just a little you got to realize, these people have been trying to fix us, right? They've been preying on us, giving us hobbies, locking us up, trying to fix us. And they think it's our willpower. They think we're just a bad moral character, right? If I loved her enough, I wouldn't drink so much. Or if I really cared about my life, I wouldn't drink so much. They got no idea. But what Silkworth's theory says is, our bodies are sickened as well. It's not it ain't my willpower. And we got amazingly strong wills. If you want to test that during this little conference, pick someone out in this room and try to get them to do something they don't want to do. Let me know how that works out for you. I got willpower, but not when it comes to drinking. But that's what we're going to talk about here. It says, it did not justify us to be told that we couldn't control our drinking just because we were maladjusted to life. There's me. That we were in full flight from reality, or were outright mental defectives. I got the trifecta, all right, and all three of those, right? These things were true to some extent, in fact, to a considerable extent with some of us, but we are sure that our bodies were sickened as well. In our belief, any picture of the alcoholic which leaves out this physical factor is incomplete. It's pretty amazing. The doctor's theory that we have an allergy to alcohol interests us. As laymen, our opinion as to his soundness may, of course, mean little. But as ex-problem drinkers, we can say that his explanation makes good sense. It explains for many things which we cannot otherwise account. Though we work out on our solution on the spiritual as well as altruistic plane, we favor hospitalization for the alcoholic who's very jittery or befogged. Right? So they know the dangers of going through the withdrawals, and who's had DTs? I mean, real DTs in here, not the shakes. I mean, the DTs, the bugs crawling on the wall, the voices, the good stuff. This is the stuff where your heart explodes, right? This is why you can die during withdrawals, right? We need hospitalization in those cases. Or as my sponsor says, anything short of that, a little orange juice and honey will get you through it. But we need some hospitalization in a lot of cases. More often than not, it's imperative that a man's brain be cleared before he's approached, and he has a better chance of understanding and accepting what we have to offer. I'm going to read the first couple parts on this next page. It says, the subject presented in this book seems to be of paramount importance to those afflicted with alcoholic addiction. I say this after many years of experience as medical director of one of the oldest hospitals in the country treating alcoholic and drug addiction. There was, therefore, a sense of real satisfaction when I was asked to contribute a few words on the subject. Next paragraph. We doctors have realized for a long time that some form of moral psychology was of urgent importance to alcoholics, but its application presented difficulties beyond our conception. What with our ultra-modern standards, our scientific approach to everything, we are perhaps not well equipped to apply the powers of good that lie outside our synthetic knowledge. That's a whole lot in that paragraph, right? So we got this little Oxford group going on, right? Silkworth at the same time is coming up with his theory on alcoholism, which we're going to get into, right? But you've got another little faction out there where some of these doctors or some of these researchers, they're talking about this moral psychology, this psychic change. When we get into Roland's story a little bit later on, he went to the great Dr. Jung. Dr. Jung knew what the solution was for alcoholism, a spiritual experience, right? And he had Roland in his care for a year. Can you imagine seeing a psychiatrist living near him and seeing him for a year, right? The problem is although he knew the solution, a spiritual experience, Dr. Jung had no idea how to bring it about. And that's what he's talking about here. Can you imagine a doctor? I know we've got good doctors today, but Dr. Silkworth, his ego was in such check that he realized that he didn't know how to bring it about. Look what they do today. My God, I go to a doctor. Who's been to multiple treatment centers? Anybody in here? I can't be the only knucklehead in here. Y'all ain't telling the truth. But we go to those doctors and they diagnose me as bipolar or manic depressive or this or that ADD. What's the new one? Is it bipolar? That's the new catch? That's a catch-all, right? Dr. Silkworth put his stuff aside to come up with this theory. Dr. Jung, his ego was in such check that he knew what the solution was. He just had no idea how to bring it about. And we're sitting here today because in 1934, all of these pieces came together for Bill Wilson. They all came together. It's pretty amazing stuff. But let's flip the page and let's just get right into the good stuff. Because I love this. So he's going to get into this allergy or this medical assessment, right? And he says, we believe, and so suggested a few years ago, that the action of alcohol in these chronic alcoholics is a manifestation of an allergy. Right? So right off the bat, he's saying if you are a real alcoholic, you're a chronic alcoholic, you are physically different than 90% of the world's population. We're different. I got an allergy to alcohol. I'm sensitive. My body doesn't react to alcohol the same way it does in my mama. Who's allergic to penicillin? What happens?
I don't take penicillin. I break out in a rash. I don't take penicillin.
Right. People start swelling up, they break out into hives, and left unchecked, they can die from that reaction, right? Now, isn't that amazing? I get a nasty little infection, and I go to this doctor, and the doctor shoots me up with penicillin, and I'm back to my feet, right? It fixes me. Jimmy goes to the same doctor with the same infection. He gets penicillin shot. He takes that shot of penicillin. He has this allergic reaction to it. And all sorts of bad stuff happens, right? He's physically allergic to penicillin. Well, Silkworth is saying that about alcoholics. We react differently to booze than the rest of the world's population. And I don't break out into highs or stuff when I drink. That's not that I've broken into some stuff, but I don't break out into anything, right? But here's how the allergy reacts on me. Says that the phenomenon of craving is limited to this class and never occurs in the average temperate drinker. Never. Right? So he's saying that if I'm a real alcoholic, I take a drink, I trigger this reaction, right? This allergy, right? The only thing a drink ever did for me is convince me that the next one was going to be better. Right? And you can do that test. Step over to the nearest bar room. Have a couple of drinks. Have a couple of drinks. Shut her down. Go home. End of story. Good night, Irene. Right? Try that a couple of days in a row. You'll know your truth. See, a knucklehead like me, I get a little period of sober time in me, and the buddies are all watching the football game at Thanksgiving or whatever, and they're having a beer or two, and I'm thinking to myself, any guy who hadn't drank for 30 days deserves a beer on Thanksgiving, right? And I got every intention of the world of just having a beer or two, but I take that drink, I trigger this phenomenon of craving, I'm powerless, I'm off to the races. The next one, the next one, the next one, right? Powerless. I have lost control. I cannot control how much I drink. There's a little question you got to answer in your heart of hearts. Can you control how much you drink? That's what he's talking about here. It's not that this is a huge thing. And this was kind of freeing at once, when I first kind of understood that. It's like, wow, now that makes a lot of sense. Right? But just knowing this gets me 0 in Alcoholics Anonymous. It doesn't do much, right? It says these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. Any form at all. You got to read the labels. No more Sunday night runs to the grocery store to stock up on, because I've overshot the mark by a mile, and I'm shaking and jittery, and I'm hitting the grocery store for Listerine or vanilla extract or NyQuil or, that Listerine, that'll do a trick on you. At least when you vomit, your breath, your vomit smells good, but I was a hopeless alcoholic. I've drank some nasty stuff, and we'll get to that later. But look what it says here. And I was at a treatment center one time, and they told me these next couple of lines I'm going to read. They told me that this is why my life is unmanageable, and I'm going to dispute that, but we'll read it. Because he says, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And once having formed the habit and found they can't break it, once having lost their self-confidence, their reliance upon things human, their problems pile up on them, they become astonishingly difficult to solve. And the treatment center said, that's why your life's unmanageable, and I wrote that down. Wrong answer. Thank you for playing. You drink as much booze as I did, that stuff happens. Problems pile up. They become astonishingly difficult to solve. Those are consequences. You drink 24/7 like I did, that stuff happens. That is not why my life's unmanageable. My life's unmanageable because left to my own devices, I am unable to manage the decision to stay away from the very first one. Can't do it. I've lost the power to choose. But we'll get into that too. But look at this next paragraph. Frothy emotional appeals seldom suffice. You remember those frothy appeals from your loved ones? You know, my girlfriend back in the day, you come home drunk one more time, I'm leaving you, even though I love you. My brain comes up with, single life's not that bad. You know, my mama pleading with me, your Uncle Melvin bled out because of alcoholism, your dad's a drunk, please don't drink, you're destroying everything. Seldom suffice. That judge giving me a stern warning from the bench, that boss who threatened to fire me, those friends who threatened to leave me and left me, frothy emotional pill did not suffice. The message which can interest and hold these alcoholic people must have depth and weight. There's another must. Whose message had depth and weight for me September the 4th, 1999? The guy who had a message that had depth and weight was this little old man who's like 80-something years old, who I got absolutely nothing in common with except for the fact that he drank as much booze or more than I ever dreamed of. And I was dying and he was free. He had been where I was at, and he knew the way out. His message had depth and weight. Whose message had depth and weight for Dr. Bob? Bill Wilson. Right? They spoke the same language. It says, in nearly all cases, their ideals must be grounded in a power greater than themselves if they are to recreate their lives. If any feel that a psychiatrist directing a hospital for alcoholics, we appear somewhat sentimental, let them stand for a while on the firing line. See the tragedies, the despairing wives, the little children. Let the solving of these problems become a part of their daily work and even their sleeping moments, and the most cynical will not wonder that we have accepted and encouraged this movement. You old-timers around here, you people that are out carrying the message and stuff, we see these tragedies day in, day out. You know? I mean, you should roll with that, come down to Dallas and roll with us to some of the places that we attend. We call them wind-up joints, you know. Somebody asked me, why do you call them wind-up joints? Well, you keep drinking, you'll wind up here, you know. Hell, we had this little halfway house we do a big book study at just recently. Word through the grapevine was this lady who's struggled mightily with alcoholism for years. I mean, got in a bad situation, blackout drunk, and ended up with the wrong people, and they just pretty much set her on fire. We thought she was dead. That's what we were told. And we were at the meeting last Sunday night, and there she was. Burned up, gauzed up, a belly full of Mad Dog. You know, it's tragic. You know, to see people who are just like us, for whatever reason, cannot or will not get this, and they no longer with us. You know, the state hospitals are full of people that look just like us. And they went to the well that one too many times. And now they're locked up in the institution, drooling on themselves, wearing diapers. And they ain't coming back. They ain't coming back. We feel that after many years of experience that we have found nothing which has contributed more to the rehabilitation of these men than the altruistic movement now growing up among them. Here's some more great stuff. Men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. True statement, right? Let's make it a really true statement, because I don't want to rewrite the big book, but let's do it this way. Alcoholic men and women drink essentially because we love the effect. I mean, think about it. Normal people, we've got the picture in our head, the businessman comes home from work, little wifey poo's waiting there, the supper's on the table, the kids are doing the homework, husband comes in, he's got the newspaper or whatever, he sits down on his big chair, and he has a nice little cocktail before before dinner, and it relaxes him and all that stuff. That's the effect, right? I'm an alcoholic. I love the effect. Remember that day? Remember those days when we were out there drinking, doing our deal, and it just wasn't going right for us, things just were not lining up. The job wasn't working out. The relationship's kind of on the rocks. My puppy's sick. The car ain't running right. I got to catch the mass transit bus, and it drives me nuts. Things aren't going right. But how did I feel when I took a drink? Did it fix any of those problems? Nope. But it changed the way I thought and felt. I want the effect. I want that effect. Think back to that first time. I grew up, everybody pat me on the butt telling me how great I'm going to be, right? And got the best clothes, the best shoes. My parents loved me, made great grades in school, played every sport, did great in all those things. On the outward appearances, I got everything going for me, except I had this little voice in my head going, "Psst, you're a loser." Self-conscious, my mama called it, Until I was 15 years old, I held out as long as I could. 15 years old at tennis camp, and I had my first experience drinking, and I was hooked. I was off to the races. I had arrived. Suddenly, all the dots were connected. I was hip, slick, and cool. The chicks I was with wanted me. It was good, man, I loved that effect. But he says the sensation is so elusive. Now they're saying that I can't even get to that sensation. It's elusive. I can't catch it. Is it the third drink, the 10th drink, whatever? I can't get to that sense. It's elusive. It's like catching air. I can't grasp it all. Because whenever I get to that magic, I go right on past it. Because alcohol take you to some places you never dreamed you'd end up. End up with some people you never dreamed you'd be with. Hell, I'd go home with Bo Derek, wake up with Bo Diddley, That's the truth about alcoholism, right? But what's the false? What does my brain come up with? This time it'll be different. This time it ain't going to hurt me. This time I'll drink like a gentleman. You know how insane that is? I got zero experience drinking like a gentleman. Never done it. Can't pull that one off. It says, to them their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Now here's the fun stuff. They are restless, irritable, discontent. So you take booze out of my life, and for a short amount of time I start to feel okay. But after a while I just wake up and I am restless, irritable, discontent guy. I'm walking down the street minding my own business, and you call my name and I'm like, what? And you see me at an AA meeting, you ask me how I'm doing, I'm just glad to be sober today. Restless, irritable. I don't know what's making me that way, but I'm restless, and I'm irritable, and I'm discontent. I ain't too happy about not drinking. Unless we can again experience a sense of ease and comfort, which comes out once by taking these few drinks. Drinks we see others taking with impunity. So now I've taken a drink. After I succumb to this desire again, as so many do, the phenomenon of craving develops. They pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to do it again. And that is repeated over and over and over. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, in the words of my sponsor, you are screwed. And he didn't use that word when he told me. I'll let you fill in the blank. That's my life story. I hang on for dear life till I can't hang on anymore, and I drink, and I end up in worse condition than when I started. And I repeated that process over and over and over. And I kept getting lower and lower. It's a progressive illness. It's like cancer. You find out you got cancer. Is that the end of the deal? No. But left untreated, that cancer consumes the host. It gets worse until you die. Alcoholism is the same way. It's progressive in nature. Left untreated, we die from it. I love this paragraph. On the other hand, and strange as this may seem to those who do not understand, once the psychic change has occurred, right, and they're going to give me some hope, the very same person who seemed doomed, who had so many problems he despaired of ever solving them, suddenly finds himself easily able to control his desire for alcohol. The only effort necessary, follow the steps. So they tell you what's going to happen left untreated, and they tell you what's going to happen if you follow the steps. From a trembling, despairing wreck, we're like risen from the ashes. We got a program of action to get us there, right? We're kind of up on our hour. I like the last page of the doctor's opinion. They're talking about, I believe it's Hank Parker. But he says, you know, this guy was a hopeless guy. And he says, however, he did become sold on the ideas contained in this book. He's not had a drink for a great many years. I see him now and then. He is a fine specimen of manhood, as one would wish to meet. I earnestly advise that every alcoholic to read this book through. And though perhaps he came to scoff, he may remain to pray. William D. Silkworth. Some pretty amazing stuff in there. And we'll take a little break, and then we'll reconvene. All right? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get to the meat of the stuff. We're on page 1, Bill's story, chapter 1. All right, and this is my sponsor. When I got in on that Tuesday, you know, he told me to go home and read this again that night, and he said, "Don't look for the differences between you and Bill. See where you relate to Bill." All right, and so we'll talk about that as we go along, because this is some good stuff. And it says, war fever ran high in the New England town to which we new young officers from Plattsburgh were assigned, and we were flattered when the first citizens took us to their homes, making us feel heroic. There was love, applause, war, moments sublime with intervals hilarious. I was part of life at last. And in the midst of the excitement, I discovered liquor. That's exactly how it was for me when all of a sudden I had arrived, you know. And it says, I forgot the strong warnings and the prejudices of my people concerning drink. Right? So there was a little bit of alcoholism in Bill's history, and they kind of warned him up, and he was just like me, and I'm like, why would I stop drinking? It works so great. All right? And it says, in time we sailed for over there. I was very lonely again, and again turned to alcohol. So here he is, and all this excitement in alcohol seems to work, and he gets very, very lonely, and alcohol seems to work. Alcohol's doing a job for Bill. It's working. Right? And it says, we landed in England. I visited Winchester Cathedral. Much moved, I wandered outside. My attention was caught by a doggerel on an old tombstone. Here lies a Hampshire grenadier who caught his death drinking cold small beer. A good soldier is ne'er forgot whether he dieth by musket or by pot. Ominous forewarning which I failed to heed. 22 and a veteran of foreign wars, I went home at last. I fancied myself a leader, for had not the men of my battery given me a special token of appreciation. My talent for leadership, I imagined, would place me at the head of vast enterprises which I would manage with the utmost assurance. Bill likes himself, don't he? He's got that ego going, right? He feels very, very highly about himself. And he says, I took a night law course and attained employment as an investigator for a surety company. The drive for success was on. I'd prove to the world that I was important. We got any provers out here? You're going to show them? You're going to show them that you're somebody. Oh, that's me big time. I'm going to show you, you know, that I make a difference, right? My work took me about Wall Street, and little by little I became interested in the market. Many people lost money, but some became very rich. Why not I? I studied economics and business as well as law. Potential alcoholic that I was, I nearly failed my law course. At one of the finals, I was too drunk to think or write. Been there. Shaking so bad that I can't think, can't write. I remember being at the liquor store trying to write out a check, Kind of hard to do. I just didn't go to my finals, Started out making straight A's in college, and by the time that semester rolled around, I'm not even showing up to the finals because I have no idea what's going on. Though my drinking was not yet continuous, it disturbed my wife. So in the midst of all this, Bill finds the love of his life, they get married, and it's starting to freak her out because she don't drink like him. She sees something going on, right? We had long talks when I would still her forebodings by telling her that men of genius conceive their best projects when drunk, that the most majestic constructions of philosophic thought were so derived. Honey, I work better. I think better. I got all these ideas. This is the way it happened. It's better for me. Drinking is working. He's trying to still her out, let her know that he's on board, he's on the roll, he's doing everything that he can, and just back off, man. I'm right. Look at all these great minds back in the day. They were drunk. By the time I completed the law course, by the time I completed the course, I knew the law was not for me. Anybody one of those people start one thing and you get done with it and like, man, that ain't it. Well, I think I'm going to be a plumber, or I'm going to work construction, right? I like building stuff with my hand. Get to be weather like this, and nope, I need an office job, Right? Nothing seems to satisfy Bill, right? The drive for success was on. He has a plan, and he gets the plan started. No, that ain't it. I need to switch. The inviting maelstrom of Wall Street had me in its grip. Business and financial leaders were my heroes. Out of this alloy of drink and speculation, I commenced to forge the weapon that would one day turn in its flight like a boomerang and all but cut me to ribbons. If you read the history on Bill, there's a reason that he has that metaphor in there. When he was a little boy, he was reading National Geographic or whatever, and they were talking about the Aborigines in Australia, and they had developed this weapon called the boomerang, and they're the only people on the planet that could make a boomerang. And Bill, as a young boy, set out to prove that magazine wrong. Bill had some willpower. He had willpower. And he set out to whittling and everything, trying to make boomerangs, going through all the wood at the farm, and I think the last straw is he took took a piece of the headboard out of his grandparents' bed and made this boomerang and kind of pissed everybody off. But he took his grandpa out there into the snow and everything and said, watch this. And I think he was 11 years old at the time or 13, and he threw that boomerang and it damn near cut their heads off on the return flight. He made it. So he's using that same metaphor for alcohol. He had no idea that what worked for him in the beginning was one day going to end up almost killing him. Had no idea. Living modestly, my wife and I saved $1,000 and went into certain securities, then cheap and rather unpopular. I rightly imagined that they would someday have great rise. I failed to persuade my broker friends to send me out looking over factories and managements, but my wife and I decided to go anyway. I had developed a theory that most people lost money in stocks through ignorance of markets. I discovered many more reasons later on. So Bill becomes kind of like a stock analyst, He's like, so he had this idea that, if you just found out people are investing in all these companies, they don't know anything about it. But if we get a book on these companies and find out all the details of this company, all the little inner workings of this company, then we can make wise decisions and we'll know when companies are undervalued and we can buy their stock. And he tried to persuade these people they didn't want to have anything to do with it, and he just said, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway. Anybody ever been there? They tell you not to go off to college or this college or take that job. Nope, I'm doing it. I got to do what I got to do. And that was Bill. It says, we gave up our positions and off we roared on a motorcycle, the sidecar stuffed with tent, blankets, and a change of clothes, and 3 huge volumes of a financial reference service. Our friends thought a lunacy commission should be appointed. Yeah, they had that, what's the name of that book? The Motorcycle Diaries or something? And you see the picture, and I think Bill was in the sidecar, Lois was driving the motorcycle, Friends thought they were nuts. Says, I had some success at speculation, so we had a little money. But we once worked on a farm for a month to avoid drawing on our small capital. That was the last honest manual labor on my part for many a day. We covered the whole eastern United States in a year. You know, during this time, one of the times they were by I think it was the General Electric factory, and Bill was at a bar, of course. You know, Lois is out camping in a tent, and he's at the bar researching. And I did a lot of research in bars, too. But he struck up a conversation with some guys who worked in the lab. And after a few drinks, they invited him back into the lab, and they showed him all the little gizmos that they were working on at the time. And that was part of his report back to his investors, that saying, look, these guys are onto some great stuff here. We need to invest in this company. This is the kind of stuff Bill was doing. The exercise of an option brought in more money, leaving us with a profit of several $1,000s for that year. You know, multiply that by 10 or 20%. They were doing pretty darn good back in the day. For the next few years, fortune threw money and applause my way. I had arrived. You know, you get a little money in an alcoholic and people pat me on the back, and you betcha I had arrived, man. I like that. My little ego likes those pats on the back and everybody thinking that I'm all cool and, oh, this is good stuff. My judgment and ideas were followed by many to the tune of paper millions. The great boom of the late 20s was seething and swelling. Drink was taking an important and exhilarating part of my life. There was loud talk in the jazz places uptown. Everyone spent in thousands and chattered in millions. Scoffers could scoff and be damned. I made a host of fair weather friends. Those are the cats that leave when you run out of money, you know. Those are the fair weathered friends, you know. My drinking assumed more serious proportions. So this drinking that works in the beginning, now it's starting to take a more important role in his life, and now he's saying it assumes more serious proportions. Sounds like he's progressing, right? The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a row, and I became a lone wolf. So now Bill, all these little friends that Bill has accumulated, now his drinking is running them off. And they're saying, Bill, you need to chill out, man. Don't drink so much. Does Bill heed their advice? No. Bill says, see ya. Move on down the road. I ran off a lot of good people back in the day because of my drinking. My drinking scared them, right? They tried to get me to stop or moderate. No, I'll lose the friends. I'm not losing the bottle. It seems that's what Bill's doing. There were many unhappy scenes in our sumptuous apartment. There had been no real infidelity, for loyalty to my wife, helped at times by extreme drunkenness, kept me out of those scrapes. We'll just have to take him at his word for that, right? As Bill sees it, as Lois remembers it. You know, there's two sides to that coin, you know. But we'll take him at his word for that, right? We're not going to rewrite the book. It says, in 1929, I contracted golf fever. We went at once to the country, my wife to applaud while I started to overtake Walter Hagen. You know, so Bill, that ego is still there for Bill, right? I mean, that's like Walter Hagen back then is like Tiger Woods today. That's like me telling my girlfriend, I'm into this golf thing, let's go out to the country club and I'm going to overtake Tiger. That's Bill's ego. He's going to overtake Walter Hagen. Ego, full force, man. It says, but liquor caught up with me much faster than I came up behind Walter. I began to be jittery in the morning. Oh, remember those days? You know, those little flyaway hands. You know, oh, sorry. You know. Golf permitted drinking every day and every night. It was fun to carry him around the exclusive course which had inspired such on me as a lad. I'd acquired the impeccable coat of tan one sees upon the well-to-do. The local banker watched me whirl fat checks in and out of his till with amused skepticism. He's high-rolling. The booze is working. He's a little shaky in the morning, but booze will fix that. Throwing money here and there, making money hand over fist. It's all good. Abruptly, in October 1929, hell broke loose on the New York Stock Exchange. After one of those days of inferno, I wobbled from the hotel bar to a brokerage office. It was 8 o'clock, 5 hours after the market closed. The ticker still clattered. I was staring at an inch of tape which bore the inscription XYZ 32. It had been 52 that morning. I was finished, and so were my friends. The papers reported men jumping to their death from the towers of high finance. That disgusted me. I would not jump. Where do we go when the going gets tough? I went back to the bar. See, early on I had that same type of drive and desire, you know? A little bump in the road, a little wrecked car, a little lost relationship, a little lost job, whatever it may be. I kind of feel down. But by God, I get to the bar and I have a couple of drinks and the plans start to come together again. I was a good planner. I was a great planner when I was drinking. Problem was I didn't remember any of it the next day. But I came up with some good stuff back in the day, you know. That's Bill. I went back to the bar. My friends had dropped several million since 10 o'clock. So what? Tomorrow is another day. As I drank, the old fierce determination to win came back. Next morning, I telephoned a friend in Montreal. He had plenty of money left and thought I'd better go to Canada. The geographical, right? Anybody do the geographical? He moved from Minnesota to Texas to get away from drinking. Drinking's very, very fast. I moved from Dallas, Texas to San Juan, Puerto Rico. Alcoholism is fast. By the time I got there, I was drunk. So by the following spring, we were living in our accustomed style. I felt like Napoleon returning from Elba. No St. Helena for me. So Bill falls right back into it, starts making money. Things are going great. But drinking caught up with me again, and my generous friend had to let me go. This time we stayed broke. So I had to look back at my story. Did my drinking cause me to lose great opportunities? You bet. Some great opportunities. And I drank them all away. Same with Bill. We went to live with my wife's parents. Now it's getting ugly. Not only did he lost the job, now he's got to go live with the in-laws, you know. It ain't working out too well for Bill. I found a job, then lost it as a result of a brawl with a taxi driver. They're just not doing it Bill's way, you know. Mercifully, no one could guess that I was to have no real employment for 5 years or hardly draw a sober breath. My wife began to work in a department store, coming home exhausted to find me drunk. Now, a lot of us say that's the perfect scenario. I stay home and drink, she works. Right? But let's think about it to the time frame. In the late 20s and 30s, the man was the man of the house. The man got up at the crack of dawn and went out and busted his rear and brought home the bacon. Right? That is his job. Right? Now, of course, we're more enlightened today and women have jobs. But back in the day, the man was supposed to bring home the money and the wife was supposed to take care of the household. That's just the way it was. And if you're a man and you ain't working and your wife is working, that's not a good thing. And so imagine Bill's ego. Imagine Bill thinking of how he feels about himself. And now drinking has taken such proportions that he's lost the job. They've run through all their money. And now his sainted wife has got to go work. You know that's got to play a number in his head. That's got to get him down. It says, I became an unwelcome hanger-on at brokerage places. So now Bill's going to Merrill Lynch and the like, coming up with great ideas, drunk, trying to get these guys on board. They don't want him around. Liquor ceased to be a luxury. It became a necessity. So he's crossed the line. God, back in the beginning, it worked so well. Somewhere along the line, early on for me, but somewhere along the line, I crossed that line. And it was no longer just happy fun times, celebrations and stuff to drink. I had to drink. It was a necessity. If I went to the grocery store, I had to drink. If I went to a movie, if you had a party, I was well oiled before I got to your party. It became a necessity. I had to drink. Bathtub gin, 2 bottles a day, and often 3 got to be routine. Sometimes a small deal would net a few $100s, and I'd pay my bills at the bars and the delicatessens. Wait a second. Bill's got to be a little humiliated that his wife is out working and he's not. Right? She's taking care of the household. Not a good thing. So he manages to put a little deal together, and you're telling me that he doesn't help out with the household, he pays off his bar tab. A little selfish? A little dishonest? Wow. This went on endlessly, and I began to waken very early in the morning, shaking violently. A tumbler full of gin, followed by a half dozen bottles of beer, would be required if I were to eat any breakfast. Hell, that was breakfast. Half a bottle of vodka, good to go. Nevertheless, I still thought I could control the situation. And there were periods of sobriety which renewed my wife's hopes. Remember that, doing that to our loved ones? Oh, honey, I'm never going to do it again. You buy her flowers, you mow the lawn, you go on for a while. Everybody, all my family would gather around me again, and everybody's kind of loving on me, and I'm doing such a good job. That's what Bill's doing. Gradually, things got worse. Oh, man. We just thought it was bad. They get worse. The house was taken over by the mortgage holder. My mother-in-law died. My wife and father-in-law became ill. Then I got a promising business opportunity. Stocks were at a low point in 1932, and I had somehow formed a group to buy. I was to share generously in the profits. Right? And Bill formed this group, and they were going to make him, I think he was going to run the company, right? But they knew Bill's past. They knew his drinking past, and they wrote into the contract that, hey, yeah, you're going to do this, you're going to share generously in the profits, but if you drink, you're done. He's got all the hope in the world. He's got this great business opportunity, every reason in the world not to drink. He's out playing cards with some fellas, and they pass around a bottle of Jersey White Lightning. Passes Bill. No, I'm not drinking today. This is great. I love playing cards. And on the second or third go-around, Bill starts to think, I ain't never had me any Jersey White Lightning. And the bottle came to him again, and he got drunk, and there goes the job. Then I went on a prodigious bender, and the chance vanished. I woke up. This had to be stopped. I saw I could not so much as take one drink. I was through forever. Anybody say that? I'm done, and I mean it this time. Before then, I'd written lots of sweet promises, but my wife happily observed that this time I meant business, and so I did. By God, he ain't going to drink. Just put the plug in the jug. Just say no. Shortly afterward, I came home drunk. Not working out too well for him. There had been no fight. Where had been my high resolve? I simply didn't know. It hadn't even come to mind. Someone pushed a drink my way, and I'd taken it. Was I crazy? I began to wonder, for such an appalling lack of perspective seemed near being just that. That's a good way to say insanity. Appalling lack of perspective, right? Renewing my resolve, I tried again. Some time passed, and confidence began to be replaced by cocksureness. I could laugh at the gin mills. Now I had what it takes. Remember those days? Beating on your chest, walk through the grocery store, and you end up on the beer aisle by mistake. And you walk by and you don't drink. And I'm telling, I was down the beer aisle and didn't drink. I got what it takes, running 5 miles a day, feeling all tough. That's Bill, man. He thinks he's got it. He's got it whooped. One day I walked into a cafe to telephone. In no time I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it happened. Now wait a second. He was just sure that he was away from the drinking thing. And he walks into a bar to telephone. How'd you like to have telephones on your trigger list? We're screwed if that's the case, right? He goes into telephone, and next thing you know, he's drunk. I was going to pick up a 60-day chip in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Not a cloud on the horizon. Still had a little money in the bank. Nobody's chasing me. My sponsor's going to take me out to dinner with a bunch of the people at that meeting. 60 days sober. Damn near died 60 days prior to that. Not a cloud on the horizon. Walk into that meeting. I hear, Mida, JK. It's 2 girls I know sitting on a little outside table. Start to talk to them. Next thing you know, it's like 3 or 4 days later. I have no idea what happened. In no time I was beating on the bar, asking myself how it had happened. As the whiskey rose to my head, I told myself I'd manage better next time, but I might as well good and drunk then, and so I did. The remorse, horror, and hopelessness of the next day are unforgettable. The courage to do battle is not there. Remember those days? You know, back page before, he has that fierce determination to win. Now I've drank so much that the next day it is so regrettable and so remorseful and so pitiful that I can't even do battle with it anymore. Can't do it. My brain raced uncontrollably, and there was the terrible sense of impending calamity. You know, what happened? Peeking out the door or the windows, you know, to see if there's anything hanging off the hood of my car, you know, like a body or something, you know. Or where is my car? How did I get here, you know? I hardly dared cross the street lest I collapse and be run down by an early morning truck, for it's scarcely daylight. An all-night place supplied me with a dozen glasses of ale. My writhing nerves were stilled at last. So he's got to drink through it. Got to drink. Morning paper told me that the market had gone to hell again. Well, so had I. The market would recover, but I wouldn't. That was a hard thought. Should I kill myself? Now, there's an option. There's one way to stop drinking. Foolproof. If you can pull it off. Never when I was 15 did I think drinking would get me to that point, but at the end of my drinking, I was wanting to die. I was just a coward. I couldn't do it. No, not now. Then a mental fog settled down. Gin would fix that. So 2 bottles and oblivion. He's just drinking all over again. Drinking for oblivion. Wake up, can't stand it, gotta drink. Wow. I like the hopeless state of mind and body. In order for me to get through the day, I gotta drink, but it's killing me. Or I'll put it another way. In order to live, I had to drink, but it was killing me. The mind and body are marvelous mechanisms, for mine endured this agony 2 more years. Sometimes I stole from my wife's slender purse when the morning terror and madness were on me. So now Bill's turned into a coward in his own household, and he's stealing from his wife. I stole from my family. I stole from my girlfriends, my friends. Again, I swayed dizzily before an open window or the medicine cabinet where there was poison, cursing myself for a weakling. There were many flights from city to country and back as my wife and I sought escape. Trying that geographical again. Well, let's go to Vermont. Can't drink in Vermont, you know. Let's go here. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. Somehow I managed to drag a mattress to a lower floor lest I suddenly leap. You can just imagine Bill on Clinton Street dragging a mattress down so he don't jump out the window, shaking and vibrating. Not a pretty picture. A doctor came with a heavy sedative. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. I'll do that. I was telling some guys outside, you know, when I got here in 99, here I am at the Parkland Hospital, you know, where they took John F. Kennedy. You know, I'm at Parkland Hospital working these ER doctors for Libriums and stuff, and I've got a big Avion bottle that I had filled with vodka, so I'm hooked up to IVs so I don't die. Working these guys for Libriums, and I'm drinking vodka in the emergency room. That'll land you on the rocks, man. Needless to say, that hospital is done with me. They don't want to see me anymore. Next day found me drinking both gin and sedative. This combination soon landed me on the rocks. People feared for my sanity. So did I. I could eat little or nothing when drinking. I was 40 pounds underweight. He's dying of malnutrition. He ain't eating. I couldn't eat. I could barely hold down the booze. Food was a no-go. My brother-in-law is a physician, and through his kindness and that of my mother, I was placed in a nationally known hospital for the mental and physical rehabilitation of alcoholics, Towns Hospital. Under the so-called belladonna treatment, my brain cleared. Hydrotherapy and mild exercise helped much. Best of all, I met a kind doctor who explained that though certainly selfish and foolish, I had been seriously ill, bodily and mentally. It relieved me somewhat to learn that in alcoholics the will is amazingly weakened when it comes to combating liquor, though it often remains strong in other respects. My incredible behavior in the face of a desperate desire to stop was explained. Understanding myself now, I fared forth in high hopes, right? I went to town and, I fared forth in high hope. For 3 or 4 months, the goose hung high. I went to town regularly, even made a little money. Surely this was the answer, self-knowledge. Well, think about that. A lot of us have been to treatment center and you get all that knowledge, right? And surely when you get out, you're never going to return to where you got, because I know what's killing me now. Alcoholism. But that's a ludicrous thing. If you went to the hospital, they diagnosed you with brain cancer, and you found out all there was about brain cancer, does that fix anything? No, it gets you 0. But here I am faring forth out of a treatment center with high hopes that now that I understand myself a little bit better, I understand what's killing me, I understand my little inner child a little bit better, king baby and all that stuff, now I'm not going to drink. Crazy talk. But it wasn't. For the frightful day came when I drank once more. The curve of my declining moral and bodily health fell off like a ski jump. So here he's at the end stages of alcoholism, and he gets a period of sobriety, and he starts to drink it again, and he, in a short amount of time, ends up way worse off than where he began. Progressive in nature. After a time, I returned to the hospital. This was the finish, the curtain, it seemed to me. My weary and despairing wife was informed that it would all end with heart failure during delirium tremens, or I would develop a wet brain, perhaps within a year. And the legend has it that he's sitting outside the room and he hears Silkworth telling his wife, he ain't going to make it. He's going to die during DTs, or we're going to have to lock him up. He's done. It's church, Imagine hearing that. Soon she would have to give me over to the undertaker of the asylum. They didn't need to tell me. I knew and almost welcomed the idea. He just wants to get done. He can't take it. It was a devastating blow to my pride. I, who had thought so well of myself and my abilities, of my capacity to surmount obstacles, was cornered at last. Now I was to plunge into the dark, joining that endless procession of sots who had gone on before. I thought of my poor wife. There had been much happiness after all. What would I not give to make amends? But that was over now. And I gotta think back to, put myself in his shoes. And I think back to my sainted mother. I mean, we grew up together. She had me when she was young, And the hell that I put her through. And I wanted desperately to make things right with her. And I couldn't do it. Because I had to drink. I think Bill really, in his heart of hearts, he didn't want to hurt Lois. He didn't. But he had to drink. No words can tell of the loneliness and despair I found in that bitter morass of self-pity. Quicksand stretched around me in all directions. I had met my match. I had been overwhelmed. Alcohol was my master. There's a pretty darn good definition of step 1. God. Trembling, I stepped from the hospital a broken man. Fear sobered me a bit. Fear will sober you a bit. Second guy I ever sponsored. Just got out of prison. Went to this little treatment center. We got a judge down there, Judge Baraka. He don't play games. Judge Baraka told him this guy had been before his court a bunch of times, and Judge Baraka told him, said, I don't know why they let you out, but they did. Your case comes across my court one more time for anything, 10 flat. Fear sobered my guy a bit. Just got out of doing a 7-year stretch. He don't want to go back down south. Fear sobered him a bit till he got out of that treatment center. He's now finishing out 10 flat. Judge Baraka don't play around. Fear will sober you a bit. Had all kinds of fears. Fear I'm going to lose that relationship, lose that job, lose that car, lose my family. It sobered me a bit. Then came the insidious insanity of that first drink. And on Armistice Day, 1934, I was off again. Everyone became resigned to the certainty that I'd have to be shut up somewhere or would stumble along to a miserable end. How dark it is before the dawn. In the reality, it was the beginning of my last debauch. I was soon to be catapulted into what I call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. It's pretty amazing stuff. He went from that bitter morass of self-pity, the bottle owning him, to the fourth dimension of existence. So let's see how he got there.
All right. Wow. You know, later on in the book, it tells us our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like. And in a general way, I think we all know exactly what Bill Wilson used to be like. And now we're going to go into the transition of what happened. And then later we're going to find out what his life is like now that he's done this. So if you ever wonder what a speaker meeting is for, this is it right here. In a general way, what we were like. Now we're going to lay out what happened. And it says, near the end of that bleak November, I sat drinking in my kitchen. With a certain satisfaction, I reflected there was enough gin concealed about the house to carry me through that night and the next day. What a lovely thought. You ever been there? At the point where you're just drinking to oblivion and you know for that moment you don't have to go anywhere for a couple days. I got enough booze to keep me through. I'm right where I need to be. You know, drinking yourself to death is a slow process. And he was well stocked. He said, my wife was at work. I wondered whether I'd dare hide a full bottle of gin near the head of our bed. I would need it before daylight. And it's funny, we're hiders, aren't we? I mean, I hid bottles and I lived alone. Think about that. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Hiding a perfectly legal substance just doesn't make sense. It says, my musing was interrupted by the telephone. The cheery voice of an old school friend asked if he might come over. And it's interesting because knowing the history, this is Ebby Thatcher. And this is Bill's closest, dearest friend. He's known for a long, long time. And the history of that is they were drinking buddies. They loved to drink. But the one thing Bill always looked at Ebby, and he always looked at Ebby in a different light than he looked at himself. He always looked at Ebby as, you know, Ebby's really got a drinking problem. And, you know, if I ever got as bad as Ebby, I think I'd stop drinking because that boy's got a problem. Now that we know this information, look where this story goes. It was years since I could remember him coming to New York he was sober. I'm surprised he doesn't have an exclamation point there. He says, it was years since I could remember his coming to New York in that condition. I was amazed. Rumor had it he had been committed for alcoholic insanity. See, back in the day, there wasn't much they did with drunks. I mean, they gave you as many chances as they could. They'd try to help you out. But basically, once the court systems and society was done with you, you were committed. It was a life sentence. You went to the state hospital for alcoholic insanity. It was goodbye time. And he had heard Ebby had gotten some trouble. He was out drinking one night and ended up, I believe it was early in the morning, he ended up driving through a woman's house, ended up in her kitchen, his car, with him in it. By that time, the court systems were done with Ebby, and Bill had heard he must be heading upriver. He's going to get locked up, and he's not going to be hearing from Ebby anymore. Now that we know this, look at this. It says, I wonder how he escaped. There's no way in Bill's mind that he would have ever got out of this, so he's thinking, the old boy must have broke loose and ran. You know, he says, I wonder how he escaped. Of course he would have dinner, and then I could drink openly with him. Unmindful of his welfare, I thought of only recapturing the spirit of other days. Who's Bill thinking about? Himself. He knows Ebby is in deep trouble, about to be committed for a life sentence and be locked up in a state institution. And what is he thinking about? I can get my drink on, and I can somehow try to grab that effect that's so elusive that we chase after, unmindful of anybody around us, aren't we? It's horrible. Oh, I thought of only recapturing the spirit of other days. There was that time we chartered an airplane to complete a JAG, which is an interesting story if you ever heard it. They heard an airport was being opened up, I believe, back in their own hometown or close to their hometown. So Bill and Ebby had an idea that they thought they wanted to be the first airplane to land at that airport. So they ran into a pilot and they made it a party and a day of it. And when they landed, they were the first plane to hit that tarmac. And the door opened to the plane, and Ebby and Bill fell right out of the plane, stumbling drunk. What a christening of an airport, huh? Those two guys showing up, the first plane. It says his coming was an oasis in this dreary desert of futility. The very thing an oasis. Drinkers are like that. The door opened, he stood there, fresh-skinned and glowing. There was something about his eyes. He was inexplicably different. What had happened? It's interesting because the funniest thing I can relate to is John and I, by the way, we're not relatives. No relation whatsoever. We just share the same last name. But we were like passing ships in different AA groups. We ran across each other throughout the 90s in the Dallas area. And it was the March of the Dead. And I'd be hanging on by the skin of my teeth in AA, and John would be showing up just dead. And I'd be hanging on, next thing I'd disappear. And when I'd come back, he'd be on his way out. And I'll never forget the last time when I walked in 2000, who did I see? There's John. And the one thing that I didn't see, there was something different about him. And here, if you've ever seen someone, their life being rearranged by this program, it's like the light comes back inside their eyes. You know, that you can just see it. I mean, it's so evident to other people. And here, Bill's looking at Ebby and going, there is something radically different about this guy. He says, I pushed a drink across the table. Oh, wonderful. He refused it. Disappointed but curious, I wonder what had got into the fellow. He wasn't himself. Come on, what's this all about? I queried. He looked straight at me, simply but smiling. He said, I've got religion. You could hear, at that point, can you imagine, you could hear the doors clanging shut in Bill's mind. You know, Bill, later on we're going to find out, he's got a little thing going on with the God and the religion thing, and Ebby almost lost him right there. I mean, the steel trap almost closed in Bill's mind. Thank God, he says, I was aghast, so that was it. Last summer, an alcoholic crackpot, now as suspected, a little cracked about religion. He had that starry-eyed look. Yes, the old boy was on fire, but bless his heart, let him rant. Besides, my gin would last longer than his preaching. Thank God, you know. But the thing is, Ebby regrouped, and here's where he saved the day. He said, but he did no ranting. You know, Ebby didn't get up on a soapbox. Thank God. No holier-than-thou attitude they talk about. He just said in a matter-of-fact way, he told how two men had appeared in court, two members of the Oxford group, came and stood in front of the judge with Ebby, and the judge persuaded the judge to suspend his commitment. They had told him of a simple religious idea. The old Oxford, what was it, the 6 tenets and 4 concepts, I believe, is what absolutes that the Oxford group had. Their simple religious idea and a practical program of action. That was 2 months ago, and the result was self-evident. It worked! ! It's a bold statement right there. Let's think about it in modern day. A newcomer walks in, he's 2 months sober, he hears that his friend is dying. And this newcomer says, I want to go talk to my friend. Maybe I can help him. And what do we tell him? Oh no, you've got to have at least a year before you could help somebody. Anybody ever heard that in AA before? Where would we be today if this guy with 2 months of sobriety had not got off his dead butt and went and tried to help his friend who was dying? Where would we be today? Think about that for a second. So much for those myths in Alcoholics Anonymous, in the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous again. It isn't about time, is it? It has nothing to do about time, how long you've been. It It says, he had come to pass his experience along to me. All Ebby was doing was, you know what? Sharing his experience and his knowledge of the problem and of the solution. Passing it on to Bill in hopes of giving Bill a little bit of hope that just maybe it might work for him, but there's a hook. He was going to pass his experience along to me if I cared to have it. I was shocked but interested. Certainly I was interested. I had to be, for I was hopeless. Remember, alcohol was his master. Bill had succumbed to step one long before AA ever, or the Oxford groups ever showed up. See, we do step one not inside these rooms. The step one experience happens out there. The day where you wake up and you realize there is no way you're going to get through this day without taking a drink. You've done everything you could do to try to control it, and you've finally bridged over to, all right, then I'll never do it again. And then you find out in your heart of hearts that you are unable to do that no matter what you come up with. He was hopeless, without a chance of success. What a lovely word. He talked for hours. Childhood memories rose before me. I could almost hear the sound of the preacher's voice as I sat on still Sundays way over there on the hillside. There was that proffered temperance pledge I never signed. My grandfather's good-natured contempt of some church folk and their doings. His insistence that the spheres really had their music, but his denial of the preacher's right to tell him how he must listen. His fearlessness as he spoke of these things just before he died. These recollections welled up from the past. They made me hard to swallow. He bristled with antagonism, did he not? There it is. Some of you may understand. Walking through these doors, we've been through a lot. You start talking about that religious thing, that God thing, and some of us get a little dicey on that subject. The wartime day in Old Winchester Cathedral came back. I'd always believed in a power greater than myself. I had often pondered these things. I was not an atheist. Few people really are, for that means a blind faith in the strange proposition that this universe originated in a cipher and aimlessly rushed nowhere. What a wonderful thought, isn't that? My intellectual heroes, the chemists, the astronomers, even the evolutionists suggested vast laws and forces at work. Despite contrary indications, I had little doubt that a mighty purpose and rhythm underlay all. How could there be so much of precise and immutable law and no intelligence? I simply had to believe in a spirit of the universe who knew neither time nor limitation, but that's as far as I had gone. With ministers and the world's religions, I parted right there. When they talked of a God personal to me who was love, superhuman strength, and direction, I became irritated and my mind snapped shut against such a theory. To Christ I conceded the certainty of a great man, not too closely followed by those who claimed him. His moral teaching, most excellent. For myself, I had adopted those parts which seemed convenient and not too difficult. The rest I disregarded. Anybody ever done that a la carte religious thing before? Yeah, I'll take that and a little bit of that, but you know what? The rest of that you can have. I mean, I totally relate to Bill's ideas on this. There were some parts of it I could accept, and there were some parts of it I just really didn't want to accept. And I could see some reasoning to and some not. There was just a lot of clamors running around inside my head. You know, you look at Bill's experience, the wars which had been fought, the burnings and the chicanery that religious dispute had facilitated made me sick. I honestly doubted whether on balance the religions of mankind had done any good. Judging from what I had seen in Europe and since, the power of God in human affairs was negligible. The brotherhood of man, a grim jest. If there was a devil, he seemed the boss universal, and he certainly had me. Look back at Bill's experience. He had fought in a world war, saw a lot of horrific things. He sat through the stock exchange collapse, and people are jumping out of towers of high finance because they had lost everything. Bill's looking at people trying to suggest God being something personal to him, and he just couldn't see it. Of all the things that he had been through, he just didn't see it. But that's okay. See, we don't have to see it. But here's where it all came together. But my friend sat before me and made the point-blank declaration that God had done for him what he could not do for himself. Remember, he looked at Ebby and went, there's no way Ebby could ever get sober on his own. Yet here's Ebby showing up at his doorstep, and there's something different about him, and he's not drinking. There's something there. He said his human will had failed. Doctors had pronounced him incurable. Society was about to lock him up. Like myself, he admitted complete defeat. Right back to the alcohol was my master. Then he had, in effect, been raised from the dead, suddenly taken from the scrap heap to a level of life better than the best he had ever known! Exclamation point. Had this power originated in him? Obviously it had not. There's no way Ebby could have done it on his own. Bill knew that in his heart of hearts. There had been no more power in him than there was at me at that minute, and this was none at all. That floored me. It began to look as though religious people were right after all. Here was something at work in a human heart which had done the impossible. My ideas about miracles were drastically revised right then. Never mind the musty past. Here sat a miracle directly across the kitchen table. He shouted great tidings. There's a wonderful lesson to be learned in those 2 pages. If you look at step 2 in a nutshell, the fact of the matter is step 1 is too simple. I'm screwed. I'm going to drink no matter what. I'm condemned to drink, and when I drink, I lose all control, and horrible things happen after I lose control when I'm drinking. It's a death sentence. Step 2 is so simple. Here's Ebby sitting across the table from Bill. Somehow Ebby is not drinking. He's happy and he's free. There's the hope of step 2. Just maybe what worked for Ebby might work for me. The miracle of step 2 is I do not have to believe in anything. The only requirement that I have to believe in is that I'm screwed in step 1. Step 2 equates to one thing. I hope. I hope this just might work for me. I don't have to believe it. I don't know about you. I walked into Alcoholics Anonymous in June of 2000, and I was convinced it was not going to work. But I was dying, and I couldn't come up with any other option. I just hoped maybe I was wrong. It's as simple as step 2 was. Look at Bill. It opened the door. The miracle is he shouted great tidings. I saw that my friend was much more than inwardly reorganized. He was on a different footing. His roots grasped a new soil. Despite the living example of my friend, there remained in me the vestiges of my old prejudice. The word God still aroused a certain antipathy. When the thought was expressed that there might be a God personal to me, this feeling was intensified. I did not like the idea. I could go for such conceptions as creative intelligence, universal mind, or spirit of nature, but I resisted the thought of a czar of the heavens, however loving his sway might be. I have since talked with scores of men who have felt the same way. And thank God we have chapter 4, because it's just trying to open the door. Bill's door was opened just a little bit by Ebby, and the sunlight began to come through, and that was the start. It was the start of a wonderful path into the fourth dimension as described earlier. My friend suggested what seemed a novel idea. He said, why don't you choose your own conception of God? That has saved so many newcomers since this was written. It's amazing. Some of us come in here all twisted up about the God thing. And like my sponsor said, if you've got a problem with God, why don't you come up with a God that you can live with today? And the thought that went through my mind is, oh my God, I'll screw that up too. I've screwed everything else up, But it's as simple as that. All to make a beginning in this, why don't I choose my own conception of God? That statement hit me hard. It melted the icy intellectual mountain in whose shadow I had lived and shivered many years. I stood in the sunlight at last. How about that? It was only a matter of being willing to believe in a power greater than myself. See, step 2 doesn't say we have to believe in anything. Step 2 is I just have to be willing to believe. The promise is that we're going to come to believe. It may take time, but all I have to be is willing. Just maybe. That's all we're doing, is a just maybe. Nothing more was required of me to make my beginning. I saw that growth could start from that point. Upon a foundation of complete willingness, I might build what I saw in my friend. Would I have it? Of course I would. Thus I was convinced that God is concerned with us humans when we want Him enough. At long last I saw, I felt, I believed, scales of pride and prejudice fell from my eyes. A new world came into view. How about that? The hope is there. But, unfortunately, there's a little rough going in between the hope in the freedom. The real significance of my experience in the cathedral burst upon me. For a brief moment, I needed and wanted God. There had been a humble willingness to have him with me, and he came. But soon the sense of his presence had been blotted out by worldly clamors, mostly within myself. Life looms large, doesn't it? I can get the problem. I can fully understand it, the knowledge of the problem. I can get a little bit of hope in step 2. Is that going to keep me sober? No, it is not. Knowing the problem and knowing the solution still is not going to get me sober. I can be diagnosed with cancer and knowing if I go through chemotherapy, I stand a great chance of surviving. Knowing those two things, all I've done is played mental gymnastics. It still won't keep me sober. There's something that I have to do after that, and that's what we're about to get into. It said, and so I had been ever since, how blind I had been. At the hospital, I was separated from alcohol for the last time. Treatment seemed wise, for I showed signs of delirium tremens. And I believe this was December 11th, 1934. Bill showed up in Towns Hospital for the last time, course of his third treatment. Here we go. He started developing the DTs, and what did the doctor say to his wife? You're probably going to die of it, or you're going to become a wet brain. Bill's scared to death. He shows back up and sees old Silkworth again. And here he is. It says, there I humbly offer myself to God as I had then understood him, to do with me as he would. I placed myself unreservedly under his care and direction. I admitted for the first time that of myself I was nothing, and that without him I was lost. I ruthlessly faced my sins and became willing to have my newfound friend take them away, root and branch. I have not had a drink since. I believe this was December, let me get these, bear with me on the dates. I believe this was December 14th. About 3 days after Bill stopped shaking violently, he asked that Ebby come back and see him, and he looked at Ebby and said, all right, what is it that you are doing? Please show me. And here's where Bill took what we know is step 3. How about that? 3 days sober. He's ready to get rolling. Well, let's find out what happened. The 14th and 15th, I believe, is when this all transpired. My schoolmate visited me. I fully acquainted him with my problems and deficiencies. We made a list of people I had hurt, or toward whom I had felt resentment. What does that sound like? Sounds awful familiar, doesn't it? Sounds like he's doing a 4-step with old Ebby, isn't he? What we now know of as a 4-step. I expressed my entire willingness to approach these individuals, admitting my wrong. Boy, that sounds a lot like step 8 and 9, doesn't it? Never was I to be critical of them. I was to write all such matters to the utmost of my ability. How about that? This guy's 4 days sober, and he's working through the steps rapidly while he's still in the hospital. What a unique concept, huh? I was to test my thinking by the new God consciousness within. Common sense would thus become uncommon sense. I was to sit quietly when in doubt, asking only for direction and strength to meet my problems as he would have me. I'll be darned, he's learned a little bit of step 11 while he's there. Never was I to pray for myself except as my request bore to my usefulness to others. Then only might I expect to receive, but that would be in great measure. So from what we know, by about December 15th or 16th of 1934, Bill had worked what we now know through steps 11. Had not gone out and actually done step 9 yet, but was fully brought up to speed on what he was expected to do once he left that hospital. This is amazing stuff, isn't it? My friend promised me that these things were done, or when these things were done, I would enter upon a new relationship with my Creator, that I would have the elements of a way of living which answered all my problems. Did you notice something here? What book are we reading? I believe it's titled Alcoholics Anonymous, isn't it? Last we checked on the title page. Wouldn't you have thought that if they were going to write precisely what they meant, why didn't he write down my alcoholic problem? Something to ponder, isn't it? Because alcohol is not our problem. John showed us. In the doctor's opinion, he laid it out. Alcohol is not our problem. Alcohol is our solution. Our solution sucks, for lack of a better word. It kills us, slowly and painfully. But when I get restless, irritable, and discontent, what do? I drink and I go to ease and comfort. Is alcohol a problem? No, it just solved a problem, did it not? The only problem is we overshoot the solution by about 6, 8 months, 10 years, and we miss the mark by a little bit. See, our problem is now that we're not drinking, life is our problem. And I'll be darned, Ebby showed him a way of answering all his problems. And this program of action didn't solve his problems. It got him to what? His Creator. This program got us to the power that would solve all our problems. How about that? The hope of step 2 happened for him. Belief in the power of God plus enough willingness, honesty, and humility to establish and maintain a new order of things were the essential requirements. Translation, it sounds like a must, doesn't it? Essential requirements. Breathing is an essential requirement to life. Do we agree? Sounds like a must, doesn't it? In order for me to live, I must breathe. How about that? We found another must. Oh no. Controversial part of the program again. Simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. Have you ever heard someone I've enjoyed the gift of sobriety since 1954. Have you ever, you hear people saying that? Like it's a fact. But I have to look at that. Next time you catch yourself saying you're enjoying the gift of sobriety, was it a gift? You mean someone walked up and handed it to you and you didn't have to do anything? I'll be darned. Sobriety is not a gift. Even Bill told you right here. Simple but not easy. A price had to be paid. I had to pay the price by doing the work, correct? In order to go from a helpless, hopeless alcoholic to a recovered alcoholic. I had to do the work. A price had to be paid. If I did not do the work, what price would be paid? I would drink again. Either way, that price is going to be paid, isn't it? So it's not truly a gift if you look at it. In essence, in its truest form, it is not a gift. You are going to pay the price one way or another. It says, it meant destruction of self-centeredness. I must turn all things to the Father of light who presides over us all. These were revolutionary and drastic proposals. At some of these we balked, didn't we? Gets kind of drastic, doesn't it? But the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. There was an utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though a great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, a spiritual awakening. But his impact on me was sudden and profound, a spiritual experience. Now we know the difference. Some of us have that burning bush. Some of us do not. Some come over time. Some happen profound. Bill's was that burning bush while he was in the hospital. For a moment I was alarmed. Think about it. This guy who had had problems with God and religion, all of a sudden he's having that burning bush moment and he's sitting back going, oh my God, what is happening to me? I was alarmed. I called my friend the doctor to ask him if I was still sane. Could you imagine what was going through this poor man's head? He's about 4 days sober, and it happened. He listened and wondered as I talked. Finally, he shook his head, saying, something has happened to you I do not understand. See, Silkworth only understood the problem. He didn't understand what the solution was, but he knew all about the problem, and he's looking at someone who had found the solution and had had that radical change, and he's looking and going, I don't understand what happened. He says, but you'd better hang on to it. Anything is better than the way you were. Amen. Think about it. The good doctor now sees many men who have had such experiences. He knows they are real. Look at this next line. While I lay in the hospital, the thought came that there were thousands of hopeless alcoholics who might be glad to have what had been given, what had been so freely given to me. Perhaps I could help some of them. They in turn might work with others. What were you thinking about your 4th day of sober? How am I going to get that job back, the girl back, and a place to live? And were you thinking about someone else? Remember Bill, who he was. The guy who made a little money and paid his bar tab off as his wife worked, and then he stole money out of her purse when he didn't have any money. And all of a sudden, he's sitting in a hospital not thinking about how am I going to get back on my feet again, but there's people who are just like me dying, and I can help them just like my friend helped me. What a complete change. A total rearrangement of thoughts and ideas. It's an amazing thing. My friend had emphasized the absolute necessity of demonstrating these principles in all my affairs. Absolute necessity. What does that spell out? I'll be darned. They're everywhere, aren't they? They dress them up. They're everywhere in all my affairs. Not only while I'm sitting in Alcoholics Anonymous, not only when I'm working with another alcoholic out on the streets, but in all my affairs. You know, the fun places like home, like in traffic. Some of you might understand that. I'm a great driver education person through my windshield, you know, in all my affairs. Someone can attest to that. Here we go again. Particularly was it imperative. There's another $10 must, isn't it? Particularly was it imperative to work with others as he had worked with me. Imperative. I must. Vital. The permanent recovery. We've got to keep track of what they've told us in the past. And how appallingly true for the alcoholic, exclamation mark. For if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through what? Work and self-sacrifice for others. He could not survive the certain trials and low spots ahead. And let's face it, they did not lie to us. Anybody have some rough going in sobriety yet? If you haven't, hang on. It's coming. Oh, is it coming? Life is not going to be a garden path now that you're sober. Guess what? The rest of the world has not changed a bit. It's still exactly the way God wants it to be, and more than likely, you aren't going to agree with it at times. There's going to be certain trials and low spots ahead. This thing is simple to do when everything's going your way. God is great, isn't He? The minute you're about to lose your job or not knowing how you're going to pay your bills, where's God and where's this program? In the next county, isn't it? I got to do something. I got to get busy. But here's where it says, work through work and self-sacrifice to other. I call my sponsor, my world is falling apart, and he's like, all right, you got a big book, you got $1, go down to the 24-hour club where you sobered up and go talk to another alcoholic. And I'm like, he must be deaf. He did not hear me. Fact of the matter is, he heard me. And he brought me right here and said, get off your bet through work and self-sacrifice with others, and you will survive these certain trials and low spots ahead. It's a promise. Take to the bank. If he did not work, he surely would drink again, and if he drank, he surely would die. Then faith would be dead indeed. With us, it is just like that. Look at this next line. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of getting me a job and a place to stay. Your book doesn't say that? I just assume that's what he'd have to do. The man hasn't held a job in how long? His wife's working at a department store. They have no place to live of their own. But what do? My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution of their problems. How about that? I was fortunate. Look at the word he uses. I was fortunate for my old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found little work. For a year and a half, the man could not find a job. And you know how he described it? Looking back, I was fortunate. Greatest thing that ever happened to me. Why? You know, have you ever noticed God has a way of removing those things blocking you off for Him? He does offer assistance. That job's getting in the way. Here, we'll get this job right out of the way. You ever had that happen? Wait a minute, but the job, God knows what He's doing. And here he found little work. I was not too well at the time. You think? You can't find a job? He says, I was plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink. Uh-oh. So what did he do? How about that? Look at this. But I soon found when all other measures failed, and boy, do we try all those other measures. We come up with some doozies. It's fun, isn't it? You sit back and listen to these newcomers come up with ideas you hadn't even thought of yet. It's like, where did you come up with that? When all other measures failed, work with another alcoholic would save the day. Many, many times I have gone to my old hospital in despair. On talking to a man there, I would be amazingly lifted up and set on my feet. It was a design for living that works in rough going. Now we've got something, don't we? How about that? We've got something that works on good days, it works on bad days, and it works on horrible days. We've got something that we can hang on to. Now we're going to find out what his life was like now that he did this work. We found out what happened. He got busy, did the work. What did his life end up like? And this is the part we never hear from the podium. We hear all about the tragedies, the war stories. You hear 2 seconds about the steps and then they close the door and have a nice night. Hopefully the guy's funny and it was a good hour, right? But we never hear about, how great our life is today now that we've done this work. The best part of the deal. Let's find out what happened with Bill. We commenced to make many fast friends and a fellowship has grown among us, of which is a wonderful thing to feel a part of. Isn't it amazing? For a year, it took me a while to get used to people calling me and asking me, how are you doing? And I'm like, what do they want? It's coming. I know they want something. And all they wanted to know was, are you okay? I had no clue what a friend was until this thing. It's an amazing thing. The joy of living we really have. And we do. My God, this isn't a veil of tears. Thank God. I mean, if we didn't enjoy this thing, where would you? If I was not enjoying life, I'm doing some drinking. Think about it. If I'm going to be miserable sober, I might as well be miserable drunk. It says, even under pressure and difficulty, I've seen hundreds of families set on their feet in the path that really goes somewhere. I've seen the most impossible domestic situations righted, feuds of bitterness of all sorts wiped out. To see someone that you have walk in front of you and they have that march of the dead in front, no lights in their eyes, and they grab a hold of this thing and their life turns around, and all of a sudden you see them grab a hold of this thing and in the power of God, and you just sit back and go, I hope I played a small part in this because this is the coolest thing I've ever witnessed in my life. We never see it as we're going through it, but man, do we see it in the people we're working with. It is the most amazing thing. I've seen men come out of asylums and resume a vital place in the lives of their families and communities. Business and professional men have regained their standing. There's scarcely any form of trouble and misery which has not been overcome among us. That's a promise. You can take it to the bank. That isn't just a high hope. That is a promise of this thing. In one Western city and its environs, there are 1,000 of us in our families. We meet frequently. Underline this, please. Do you know why they had meetings? We meet frequently so that newcomers may find the fellowship they seek. You notice they didn't say we meet frequently so you at 15 years sober can walk in and complain about how your dog won't stop peeing on the rug, how that divorce is still eating your lunch. That is not what this thing is about. Why did they meet? The original AA group in Akron still has one meeting a week, and that is it, and it is a newcomers meeting to give hope to someone who is dying, just like you were when you came in. If you want to talk about your problems, who should you call? What a novel idea. Your sponsor and do a 10th step. They've got that covered in this book. It's an amazing thing. How about that? All right, I'm off that soapbox. At these informal gatherings, one may often have... I'm sorry, I took the jacket off. Did you notice? It's good. Oh, the gloves are off. All right. At these informal gatherings, one may often see from 50 to 200 persons. We are growing in numbers and power. An alcoholic in his cups is an unlovely creature. If you want to see it, come visit me. I'll show you a picture. It's not pretty. We should all have one. They should take pictures of newcomers the day they walk in, and so you can have it. Not to be used, then you hand it to them and say, hang on to this. You can remind yourself just how bad it is. Because we are an unlovely creature in our cups, aren't we? It says, our struggles with them are variously strenuous, comic, and tragic, and boy, are they ever. One poor chap committed suicide in our home. This thing is deadly serious. He could not or would not see our way of life. There is, however, a vast amount of fun about it. I suppose some would be shocked by our seemingly worldliness and levity, but just underneath there is a deadly earnestness. Faith has to work 24 hours a day in and through us or we perish. Most of us feel we need not look further for utopia. We have it with us right here and now. Each day, my friend, simple talk in our kitchen, and I love you got a picture of it right over there. The table, if anybody noticed, it's sitting right over there with the 2 cups on it. Multiplies itself in a widening circle of peace on earth and goodwill toward men. Where would we be without that kitchen talk? They'd be having some other conference here today, wouldn't they? It says Bill W., co-founder of AA, died January 24th, 1971. All right, let's take a break.
You want to use this for the lunch break and then come back after?
Gather around.
Good one. Chicken cracker, I like that.
She's something else.
She sure is.
We couldn't stand to the window.
All right, we're gonna jump right back into it. Everybody, I hope, has had a good lunch. Got our batteries recharged. I got enough jalapenos in me to last for a while. We're going to start off on page 17, chapter 2. There is a solution.
Oh, thank God.
Yes. Hallelujah, there's a solution. We'll get to it in about 7 pages. Right? But this is pretty neat. You know, Bill lays out his story, and we've gone through the doctor's opinion, and they laid out, this allergy and all this stuff, and now they're going to dwell upon this step 1 stuff. They're going to dwell upon this loss of control and this loss of choice, and we're going to see where he takes us here. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all have recovered. They have solved the drink problem. At first reading of that, it's a pretty innocuous little paragraph, but look what it says there. Thinking of the first 100, the people who wrote this book, thinking about to their success rate back in the day, nearly all recovered. Nearly all the people they worked with recovered from alcoholism. That's hopeful. That's some good stuff. And it says, we are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix. We do this. Obviously we're from Dallas, and I did most of my drinking, 90% of my drinking was in Dallas, and I'm in these rooms or at these treatment centers or whatever. I didn't know a dang one of you. People who normally wouldn't mix, yet here we are. That's kind of a cool thing. It says, but there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful. We're like the passengers of a great liner the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. And Joe and Charlie explain it, back in the day when you had to do a long trip, you didn't just hop on a flight, if you were going to Europe or South America or something like that, you went on a ship. And if you were an immigrant coming over here from Europe and you barely had a pot to piss in, you were in the steerage you were in the bowels of the ship, and you barely got any fresh air. But at the other end of the spectrum, if you had the real money, big money, old money, Vanderbilt money, you might be asked to dine with the captain of the ship. Yet when the ship goes down and there's a wreck, we're not asking each other for W-2 forms or anything. I don't care. You got a raft and I'm drowning. It don't matter. And that's what they're talking about here. But this is important stuff right here. Unlike the feeling of the ship's passengers, however, our joy and escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement that binds us. So he's saying right there that the fellowship that we have is one element that's going to keep us here. The treatment centers are telling me that I must go to 90 meetings in 90 days, keep coming back, blah, 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 blah. And those of you who have a bunch of desire chips know that Look, there was a lot of times where I did not want to drink. Early on, I wanted to heat off. But towards the end of my drinking career, I did not want to end up where I kept ending up. And I'd get plugged back into the fellowship, doing 90 meetings in 90 days. You know, one time I did 270 meetings in 90 days. I didn't have a job. I went to the noon, the 6, the 8. Day 92, 93, I'm looking for a tall building and a sniper rifle. And I'm taking some people out, you know. But look at it. He calls it a powerful cement. So you folks know what epoxy is, right? It's two parts, hardener and a resin, right? You can have all the resin in the world. Ain't nothing going to stick to it. You got to mix those two parts together, and then you've got a powerful adhesive that'll hold anything. The fellowship is one element that keeps us together. The other element is the program. That's what keeps us here, is the program. It says the tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution, the program. We have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. And I'm just a big believer that we need to get into the program that, hey, the fellowship love me to death. Don't get me wrong. I don't have anything bad to say. They will love me to death. Because I will drink to death. They'll tell me to keep coming back. I got to have a program in my life. It says, an illness of this sort, and we've come to believe it, an illness involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him, and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness. For with it there goes annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. Look at the words he uses in this book. I mean, you got to study this book, because he could have said, but there goes with it all the thing. He calls it annihilation. That's what I did to the things in my life that I supposedly cherished. I annihilated them with alcoholism. I destroyed everything in my path. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. You know, me being closed-minded, drinking back in the day, my motto was, hey, get off my back. I ain't hurting anybody. It's my life. But I annihilated all those people who cared about me. All my family members who love me dearly. It touches everyone. I mean, I challenge you, go to Wichita, go to the mall. Christmas time, people are out shopping, they'll be packed. Try to find one person in the mall whose life isn't touched by alcoholism. Let me know if you find somebody, because we touch them all. Because whether it could be in my family an alcoholic, or I'm married to an alcoholic, or my mother or dad's an alcoholic, or my brother was hit by a drunk driver, or I had to fire it out, it covers the board. We touch everything. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, sad wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or who may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with this have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss a situation without reserve. Anybody been to psychiatrist or psychologist? Come on, I like group participation. Did you give them a fair shot? Did you tell them the truth? Come on. I was telling them the truth as I saw it, you know? Oh, come on. You put me on the Dr. Phil show, I'll make that man weep. Tell him my sad story, right? I'll make him weep. He ain't getting through. I'm going to tell him the way I think it is. But how about this? Strangely enough, wise parents, intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist or the doctor. Oh, when my mama starts talking to me about it, end of story. Mind snap shuts, talk to the hand, go away. Don't want to hear it. Look at this. Good definition of a sponsor. But the ex-problem drinker who has found a solution, who is properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. That's my sponsor. He's suffering from the same affliction that I am. I'm the one who was dying. He wasn't. That guy spoke my language. We identified. It tells us about it in chapter 7. Who spoke Dr. Bob's language? Bill Wilson. Alcoholic number 3 is a classic example of this right here. They spoke Bill Dotson's language. Why? Bill Dotson's been going to church, been trying to quit drinking for years and years and years. When he saw that they knew all about the drinking game, he perked up. He was desperate. That the man who was making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he's talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with the real answer, that he has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except a sincere desire to be helpful, that there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, here's some more hope. Many take up from their beds and walk again. You guys out there on the firing line see it all the time. People who are written off. Written off. Yet when they come into contact with one of us and we present the problem and we share with them our experience and strength and hope, those people who were written off can take up and walk again. None of us make a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is the be-all, end-all. Oh, wait, my book doesn't say that. We feel that elimination of drinking is but a beginning. No, we stopped hundreds of times before. That was just the beginning. I thought that was the end of the game. Stop drinking. You take booze away from me back in the day, my life did not get better. It unraveled in a hurry. Elimination of drinking is but a beginning. Look where it is. Much more demonstrations of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. That's where we practice these principles. You can give a monkey a big book and some flashcards, he can 12-step somebody, right? Anybody can go to an AA meeting and sit around and hear somebody all wise and got a lot of experience. I can hear something really witty at your little meeting, and I can parrot it and take it back to my meeting, and you'll pat me on the back thinking how great I am. I got to practice these principles in all my affairs. You know, I got to practice these principles with my family, with my friends, with my coworkers. People in the express line at Tom Thumb grocery store when they got like 23 items in the 15 or less. I got to practice these principles, you know. It drives me nuts. Here's my favorite line in the big book. Here's my favorite line in the big book right here, because I love this one. It says, all of us spend much of our spare time in the sort of effort which we're going to describe. That's my favorite line. Why were they successful back in the day? Because all of them did this. All of them got a sponsor, worked the steps, and when they recovered, they went out of their way to seek out another alcoholic and carried this message. All of them did that. That translated into anywhere from 50 to 90% success rate, depending on whose math you count. All of them did that. It was not an option. My sponsor put it to me bluntly. First night back, he told me, well, hey, I didn't ask him to be my sponsor. He appointed himself. He says, John, I'm now your sponsor. You're going to call me when I tell you to call me. You're going to show up where I tell you to show up. You're going to read what I tell you to read. And the minute you balk, go away. Now, in those nice little discussion meetings, those little fellowshipy meetings, they say, oh, that's too harsh. No, that was the best thing for me. The minute I balk, go away. Go find another group that'll do it your way. 300 groups in Dallas. One of them's bound to do it your way. If you want to roll the way we roll, you do what we do. We're just doing it old school. We're doing it the way they did it back in the day. All of us spend much of our... You look at the vitality of our group in Dallas now. It'll blow your mind. You experience it here. People of like minds following these directions, doing this stuff. This is what we do. That is my primary purpose. A few are fortunate enough to be so situated they can nearly give all their time to the work. Clancy, out of California. Was it the first 2 years he was sober, he couldn't get a job? Lived in the back of the shelter that he was living at, doing odd jobs for them so they let him stay around? Couldn't get a job for 2 years. I'm the genius in the 90s that had burned up everything in my life, and as soon as I got out of treatment, it became imperative that first and foremost I got to get the Holy Trinity, the job, the car, the girl. And then I'll work these steps, It's pretty amazing. If we keep on the way we're going, there's little doubt that much good will result, but the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. Many could recover if they had the opportunity we have enjoyed. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? I didn't come into AA looking like this. I was in bad shape. But our tendency in AA today, it seems like, is, okay, now that we get sober, we've got our little home group, and we come and we have our little fellowship, we make our coffee and do our little stuff that, we'll be there for the newcomer. Well, you know what? Our job is to go out and find the newcomer. See, we just take it for granted that those people out there know that we're in here. But the truth of the matter is there's people around in this community right now drinking themselves to death, and they have absolutely no idea what the problem is. They think it's the child abuse or the divorce or the finances or whatever it is. They got no idea what's killing them. How are they going to know unless we go seek them out? We're going to clean up, have a meeting in here, and wait for them to show up here? How are they going to show up if they don't know we're here? We have to get off our rears and go find them. Hell, I found a bottle. Right? I went to any lengths to get a drink. Any length. Drink some stuff that you're not supposed to drink. Me staying sober is no different. I got a big book. And I've had a spiritual experience. And I don't care where God puts me on God's green earth, I'll find a drunk. I can have me a meeting. I can't sit here all sober and stuff, wait for the drunk to show up to me. They may not know I exist. I got to go find them. We've concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge, not our theories, not our opinions, their experience and knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem. Of necessity, there will have to be discussion of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware that these matters are from their very nature controversial, you bet. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for contention or argument. We shall do our utmost to achieve that ideal. This book comes out in 1939. This book is now in, I don't know how many languages now. 40? Right?
56.
56, okay. All over the world. Christian communities. We got some guys in Iran right now translating our study guide. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what religious persuasion you come from. Doesn't matter. This spiritual principles are spiritual principles, whether or not you believe them or not. There's a great book. This is not AA related. There's a great book called The Spirituality of Imperfection. And it talks about spiritual principles. In any religion, any theology, anything, that's what these principles are. They contend with nothing. There's no contention. They don't conflict with anything. This translates easily into Spanish as it does to Russian. Doesn't matter. It's pretty cool stuff. Most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints and respect for their opinions and attitudes which make us more useful to others. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. Constant thought of others. I'll tell you a little story. I wasn't sober very long, 2 or 3 weeks, max. In this little job that I had quit, and they hired me back when I got sober, I had to do a little project for them. I was the only one who could do it. And they didn't want me back, but they needed me back. And so they were going to have me work for a few days, do this project, and they were going to pay me cash, right? And I started working for him, and I'm working, and a week goes by, and 2 weeks go by, and the project's still going on. We're wrapping it up. It's on a Sunday. I just know, and I've had a great Sunday. I've talked to my sponsor. I've gone up to this little treatment center, helped some guys out and everything. And I got home that Sunday night, and I'm thinking, man, I'm gonna go to that job tomorrow, and they're gonna fire me, and what am I gonna do? I'm not gonna have money to pay the bills, and next thing you know, I'll be living in a van down by the river, and and it just snowballed, right? Manufactured fear, right? And I called my sponsor. And he listened to me. He let me get it all out. And he said, gives me the line. John, you got $1? Oh, yeah, I got $1. Great. I'm going to hang up now. You're going to say a prayer and take your $1 and take your big book and go to 24-hour club, buy a cup of coffee, and talk to every SOB that walks through that door, tell them your story, call me in a couple hours when you're done. Constant thought of others. I got to get out of me to go help you. If I'm helping me all the time, not helping you, how am I going to stay sober? I won't. You may have already asked yourself, well, why is it that all of us became so very ill from drinking? Doubtless you're curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, underline this, we have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. Somebody says you're always recovering, or there's no such thing as recovered, you can point them to this page and 30-something others. If you're an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? It's the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. We'll tell you what we have done. Before going into a detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. How many times have people said to us, I can take it or leave it alone, why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl, I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him if he ever drank again, it'd kill him, but there he is all lit up again. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers which we hear all the time. Underline this. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. See, my mom sees me doing the things that I did. Her solution is, don't do that. Right? You're killing yourself. We love you. Don't do it. But until I got sober, until I could take her through this book, she didn't know what was killing me. My mama is now a big book thumper. She ain't an alcoholic. She can spot a middle-of-the-roader by the first sentence out of their mouth, though. She knows the truth about alcoholism. Right? Those people react different, Their solution, they get in a little trouble or whatever, and their solution is they have a bad night and get sick all over themselves on New Year's Day or whatever. Their solution is they stop. My solution was fight through it. Tomorrow's another day, right? Moderate drinkers, and now we're going to get into some little types here. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely if they have good reason. They can take it or leave it. Right? Now here's the tricky guy. Then we have the certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. May cause him to die a few years before his time. Here's the catch. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can stop or moderate. All right? So you got the moderate drinker. He can take it or leave it. It's no big deal. If he has a glass of beer with dinner, great. If not, great. Doesn't matter. And then you got the guy that's kind of confusing, right? Then you got this hard drinker type, right? And we know these people. I used to work in the bar business. I know a lot of these people. They partied with me all the time. I thought they were just like me. But time goes by, right? I'm the real alcoholic. They, on the other hand, got out of the bar business, maybe finished up college, they fell in love, they've got little babies. They don't do that stuff anymore, right? Treatment center spits these people out left and right. Given sufficient, we have a lot of these people in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? They got a DWI, They got in a little spousal spat and the cops were involved. The judge suggests Alcoholics Anonymous. They've been drinking too much. They come to Alcoholics Anonymous. We got good coffee, some pretty women. They stay. Their solution, they don't drink. They may be angry as hell, but they don't drink. But I'm not that guy. I've had all these reasons. I've had ill health. Falling in love, falling out of love. Good jobs, bad jobs, no jobs. I've had every reason under the sun not to pick up a drink. I drink. That sets me apart, because here it is. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. That allergy is in full effect. Here's the fellow who's been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. That's twice on this page they're talking about control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He's a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Do you know why he uses that analogy? Other than the obvious? Robert Louis Stevenson wrote Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He died of alcoholism. And they suspect that he wrote that book. It's kind of like an autobiography. That was him. He drank himself to death. He's seldom mildly intoxicated. I was very rarely mildly intoxicated. It's kind of like Texas Hold'em, baby. I was all in, you know. He's always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important engagement must be kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special aptitudes, or special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. Is that making any sense to anybody? I bet it'd be amazing what if Alcoholics Anonymous could form a company and build something or make something. It'd be incredible the talent we have in these rooms. Artists, engineers, you name it, lawyers. We got great abilities. And I'd use these abilities to build up my outlook. And then, boom. Usually at the worst possible time, I start to drink. And the whole thing caves in around me. He's the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated, he ought to sleep the clock around. Yet, early the next morning, he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. Michael touched on it earlier. We got any bottle hiders in here? Can't find the bottles, man. Where did I put them? Have y'all seen that movie, The Lost Weekend? When he's searching for that bottle and it's up in the light. And I'm sitting there watching the TV going, it's in the light! Come on! This guy needs a drink, He needs a drink, man. And I lived alone and I got bottles of booze hidden everywhere and I don't know where they're at, If he can afford it, he may have had liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply from him and throw down the waste pipe. You gotta hide it. You gotta be ingenious if you're living with somebody who might throw it away, Hide it in all the good places and toilet tanks and under the house. And I did mine in plain daylight. I poured out a water bottle and filled it up with vodka and put it in the refrigerator. Smart drunk. I'm a smart drunk. Nobody will ever think to look there. As matters grow worse, they get worse. Shoot. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. Good stuff. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary. But this description should identify him roughly. Why does he behave like this? Why do we do it? Now we're getting to the crux of the matter, right? Why is it that I do this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all its intended suffering and humiliation, why is it that we take the first drink? I mean, think about it. If you walk up to a stove and you burn your hand, the next time you walk into the stove, you're going to check. I mean, if we didn't have that kind of reaction to stuff, we'd never make it out of our childhoods. Because we'd never understand danger or fear or anything. We'd just walk out in front of cars. We'd die. The whole would be extinct. Part of our gift is for survival. But yet when it comes to drinking, knowing all that's happened to me, what does my brain come up with? This time it'll be different. I ain't going to get burned this time. Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerable as to why alcoholics react differently from normal people. We're not sure why, once a certain point is reached, little or nothing can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. You'd think the worse we got, the more we try, we've tried everything, right? But we keep going back to it over and over and over. What does those normal people think? God, they must be nuts, right? They're right. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We're equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens, both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. Has anybody had a long period of sobriety and then you relapse? How quick did you go down? Quickly?
Immediately.
Yeah. And we get along without booze, and then once I take that drink, man, in a short amount of time, I'm on the rocks. It didn't take me anything to get there. Virtually impossible for him to stop. And and I've seen it too many times just in these years that I've been sober, people that have had long-term sobriety. 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. For whatever reason, they got disconnected, got off the program, did, whatever reason, they went back to drinking. And you talk about some horror stories. A lot of them don't end up too good. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. Pass it over to Mike.
All right. Not a pretty picture that just painted. It says, these observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers his mind rather than his body. What a profound statement. Think about it. If I told you today I was allergic to strawberries, and I have a violent reaction to strawberries when I eat them, I start swelling up. I turn as red as this woman's shirt right here. It's horrible. And then tomorrow morning, you see me in here with a bowl of strawberries, pulling them out one by one and eating them, and start blowing up like a balloon, looking like a Macy Day float or whatever, scratching, wheezing. What is my problem? Is my problem that I'm allergic to strawberries? What are you going to be thinking? Oh, really? See, our main problem centers in our mind rather than our body. See, my problem sits squarely upon my shoulders. I've got a mind that wants to kill me and make it look like an accident. It wants to tell me it's going to be okay. Have another drink. What is the part of the equation that can't be trusted? My mind. Well, let me ask you this. What do you listen to 99.999% of your life? You're paying attention to the thing that's broke. The broken thing is calling all the shots. Think about that for a second. That's frightening. I'd have better luck pulling someone out of a state institution who's mentally impaired and saying, make all my life choices. They'd probably do better. It's an amazing thing. Oh, here's a fun one. The age-old riddle. It says, if you ask him why he started on his last bender, the chances are he will offer you any one of 100 alibis. How many hours have we spent? Why is it I drank? Why is it I did that? I need to know why I drink. Hold that thought. It says, sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. I lost my job, so I'm going to drink up the rest of my money. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? What a great excuse to go get drunk and devastate your life some more. I just lost my job. Makes perfect sense in my mind. You know, sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc an alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of a man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the ache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he'll laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Think about it. Have you ever wondered why your family members and loved ones looked at you like your head was on fire as you came out of your last debacle? And they're asking you, what are you doing? You know, it's amazing. Here's a fun one. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. Have you ever actually answered that question honestly? Why is it you went out and drank last night? Have you ever actually answered it honestly? Why is it, Michael, that you knew once you start drinking, your life comes undone and horrible things happen to you? I've had loved ones ask me, why is it? You knew what was going to happen. Why did you do it? And I'd make up because she left me, because the boss is mean to me, because of this, because of that, because my daddy was a brutal alcoholic. That's why I'd come up with every reason in the world. But a couple times I actually got bone-chilling honest and went, you know what? I don't know. And look what the next line says. It says, in the truth, strange to say, is that usually he has no idea why he took the first drink than you have. And the fact of the matter is, you can't answer that riddle. We will on the next page. I'll tell you exactly why we drink. It's going to tell us. Well, let's keep on. Some drinkers have excuses which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts they really don't know why they do it. Once this malady has a hold, they are a baffled lot. Once that obsession has got a hold of us, that's the most confusing part. Later on we're going to find out no matter the necessity or the wish, we find we cannot not drink. No matter how great the necessity, no matter how great the wish, I can't stay away from the first one to save my own life. It says, there's an obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. This time it's going to be different. If I just eat me some fried chicken, nice and greasy, I can drink that Jack Daniels again and bad stuff isn't going to happen. It made sense in my mind. That was one of my beautiful thoughts. It says, but they often suspect they are down for the count. How true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal, and oh, do they ever. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. It's frightening. We've gone to the same treatment facility. The first time I went there was in 1997, but we still go there every Friday night. And they used to have family days on Sundays, and we'd go do step work with the people on visitation days. So John and I and a handful of us would be down there every Sunday afternoon doing step work with these gentlemen. And you'd see the family members circling around. Old Jimmy. Jimmy's all tore up, but you can hear the family. Jimmy says this time it's going to be different. Anybody ever said that before? I mean business this time. And you see the family's hopes rise up and rise up. And the fact of the matter is we sit back and the chances of Jimmy surviving this thing are slim to none today. And look what it says. It says the tragic truth is, if a man be a real alcoholic, that happy day may not arrive. And there's the truth. It says he has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. The tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. Many of us could have stopped early on, but we didn't want to. Unfortunately, we overshot that mark, and by the time we got to the point where we didn't ever want to drink again, it was way too late. If you want to know why you drink, here it is. The fact is, for most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, they have lost the power of choice in drink. Look at it. Can you control how much you drink when you start drinking? I cannot call my numbers. I have no choice in the matter. Once I start, it isn't done until I can no longer hold a bottle up and pour alcohol down my throat. That's what happens every time I pick up a drink. But that isn't even the bad part. The bad part is I come to from another one of those tragic events, shaken like a leaf on a tree, and say, that's it, I am never going to do it again. Have you ever said to yourself, you're never going to pick up another drink as long as you live, and you meant it? People, oh, you just don't want it bad enough. BS. I've wanted it so bad it hurt. Sitting there shaking like a leaf on a tree, tears pouring down my face. I don't want to pick up another drink. 32 minutes later, what am I doing? I don't have a choice. See, John touched on it. You want to know the horror stories, and I love Alcoholics Anonymous, but inside these rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, there are a lot of people who are not alcoholics. They're a hard drinker. They got in a little trouble. Guess what? They found a way not to drink. They're lonely. They want some to hang out. They fill these rooms. They sit in here 25 years. Just fill that seat. Just keep sitting in that chair and just don't drink no matter what. Put the plug in the jug. Do what I do. Well, unfortunately, that man is not an alcoholic. There's the truth. The fact of the matter is, a real alcoholic is going to drink no matter what. There is not a thing you can do about it. You are condemned to pick up that drink no matter what you do. You lock us up in a room and somehow we will escape. Think about it. The fact of the matter is, for a real alcoholic, he cannot choose whether he drinks or not. Welcome to that our lives have become unmanageable. We're not unmanageable because I've wrecked a car, I got a DWI, I've destroyed family members, all of that tragic stuff that happens as a result of drinking alcohol. Guess what? You drink enough booze like we do and tragic things happen. That isn't why your life has become unmanageable. My life has become unmanageable because of the simple fact every time I say I am never going to pick up another drink as long as I live, I am unable to manage that decision to stay away from the first one to save my own life, period. That's what it means to be an alcoholic. I've lost the choice. It says their so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent, and we do have willpower. I thought I was a bad, weak-willed person for years. That's what it meant. That's why I am the way I am. And the fact of the matter is, we are the most headstrong people you have ever met in your life. We are, except when it comes to alcohol. When it comes to alcohol, our so-called willpower becomes non-existent. It is not a player. It looks great on paper, but it loses every time. Look at this. We are unable, and underline this, at certain times, because here's where the arguments come in, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. And I'll have people say, that's not true. At certain times, I stayed sober for 3 years. They told me I was going to go to jail, and I didn't take a drink. Well, that's all great. But have you ever seen the game Russian Roulette before? You ever seen The Deer Hunter, the movie? It's an interesting game. You put one bullet in a revolver, and you spin the chamber, and you put the gun to your head, and you pull the trigger. You know what happens at certain times? At certain times, the gun goes boom. And you don't know when that's going to happen. And the fact of the matter is, at certain times, fear The suffering of what we went through in the past is not going to be able to be brought up with sufficient force into my mind. It's not that I've forgotten it's happened. It's the fact of the matter is, it's happened, but at certain times it is not powerful enough to keep me away from the first drink. And the frightening part is that I don't know when those certain times are. Sometimes I might be able to do it. But sometimes I'm not going to be able to do it. And I can't predict either or. Left to our own devices, it's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Welcome to being an alcoholic. It says, the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. Yeah, I'm going to drink like my mom. 2 glasses of wine and pull up and be done for the night. I've got no experience on that. How am I going to handle myself like other people? I'm unable. It says, there is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. There I am. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way and after the 3rd or 4th pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Anybody been there before? All of a sudden you realize you got a drink in your hand and you're like, what just happened? Someone walked by, handed me a beer, and next thing I know I'm drinking it. And I don't even know why. It's like I can't even piece it together. Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop on the 6th drink, or what's the use anyhow? Boy, I'm good at flying that flag, aren't I? You all know what I'm talking about. Look at this next part. When this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he's probably placed himself beyond human aid. It's an interesting concept there. Anybody ever heard that lovely thing, I'm just powerless over people, places, and things? Sounds great, isn't it? Anybody think it's true? Honestly? I wish it was. If I was powerless over places, the threat of going to prison would keep me sober. Because I don't like that place. If I was powerless over people, my mother begging me and pleading me, don't pick up another drink, you're dying. If I was powerless over people, she would have kept me sober, right? How about things? Anybody have some nice things before and drink them up? Things that you really liked, houses, cars, whatever it may be, yet you drank them up. If I was powerless over things, those things would have kept me sober. So if you can't keep yourself sober, and those things I just listed off can't keep you sober, have you placed yourself beyond human aid? That's the question you have to ask yourself. And if you have, look where the game goes from there. Oh boy, unless you get locked up, you're going to die or go permanently insane. There's a fun game of let's make a deal. Which door you want to pick? 1, 2, or 3. Locked up, die, or go permanently insane. I don't know about you, but the first time I drank and I felt the effect of alcohol, that was not on my horizon. I never thought it would take me there, but guess what? In 2000, those were my options. It says these are stark and ugly facts that have been confirmed by a legion of alcoholics throughout history, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands of more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop but cannot. So many times we want to tell that newcomer, you just don't want it enough. My God, please stop telling him that. Do you remember coming in how bad you wanted to not drink? How soon we forget. A lot of us have not wanted to drink. A lot of us. It says, oh, here we go. There is a solution. What was the title of this chapter? There is a solution, but 8 pages of information before that had to convince us that there still is a problem. Let's understand the problem. Now we get to the solution, and here it is. There is a solution almost none of us like: the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of our shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. What a $10 way to say there is a solution and you aren't going to like it. But the thing you have to ask yourself is, how well did you like it out there? I don't know about you, but I was not having a good old time just partying on. Fact of the matter was, it was absolutely miserable. Here's reinforcement of step 2, but we really saw it worked in others. Remember Ebby with Bill? He saw it worked. It says, and we have come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. How about that? A recovered alcoholic. There was nothing left for us to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We had found much of heaven and been rocketed into the fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The great fact is just this and nothing else. Nothing less. That we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards our fellows, and towards God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things which we could have never done by ourselves. How about that? I can't keep myself sober, but He can. Amazing. If you're serious as an alcoholic as we were, we believe there's no middle-of-the-road solution. Here it is. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we have passed into the region from which there is no return through human aid, there it is again, we had but two alternatives. You notice it's no longer let's make a deal? How many of you spent years looking for door number 3? Because they're going to tell you what door number 1 and 2 are, and I could have swore there had to have been a door number 3. But here it is. 1 is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best we could. Living and dying in step 1. Taking it out to the bitter end. And the other is to accept spiritual help. What are your choices to be? Either go on the way you're going, or give this thing a shot. There's only 2 choices here. It says this we did because we honestly wanted to and were willing to make the effort. And here I love this story, this Roland Hazard's story. And it's an amazing story. Roland came from big money. His family had money. And Roland was one of us. And his family tried to fix him every which way they could. Oh my God, they sent him all over the United States trying to fix him. So let's find out about Roland. It says a certain American businessman had an ability, good sense, and high character. For years he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrists. Boy, did they try to fix him. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. And it's an interesting thing because they wanted to send him to see Sigmund Freud, but Freud didn't have time to deal with Roland. So they went to Plan B. And Carl Jung had time and said he'd take him. And if you ever get a chance to study psychology at all, you're going to find out that it's 1A and 1B. The 2 greatest psychiatric minds known to man, still documented as Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud. So here they sent Roland to spend a year with Carl Jung. And let's find out what happened. Though the experience made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Self-knowledge is going to fix it, isn't it? Now he knew exactly what the problem was. He's on his way, right? The road to success. Well, let's find out. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. Rumor has it, I believe he was found drunk on a train in Spain. I can stand corrected on that, but I believe that's what someone told me. He didn't make it very far in Europe, trying to get home. More baffling still, he could not give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to this doctor whom he admired and asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatever over alcohol. Why was this? Isn't that the million-dollar question? What is wrong with me? Well, he begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. Boy, that had to be a fun day, huh? Allegedly the best of the best to fix old Roland, and the best of the best looked at him and said, buddy, you're toast. You're hopeless. You're left with no chance of success. Wonderful. Wow, let's see where it goes. He could never regain his position in society and would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. Boy, there's a fun day, huh? It says, but this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men may go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. And I love that word. Silkworth was the first one to introduce it to us. Chronic, what does it mean? I'm a diabetic. It's a chronic illness. Up to this point, I'm always going to be a diabetic. It's always there, left untreated. It's going to be bad. Here he's describing old Roland as you're suffering from being a chronic alcoholic, always present, always lingering, always getting worse, never better. Not a good thing. I've never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you. Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, is there no exception? Yes, the doctor replied, there is. Exceptions to your cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here's some shades of hope. Here and there, once in a while. Boy, talking about building his day up. Think about it. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are a phenomenon. In other words, Dr. Young looked at it and said, you know what, there is a solution. Here and there, once in a while, throughout time, it has happened, but I have no idea how it happens. They're an absolute mystery to me. Nice. They appeared, but he knew what had to happen. And if you ever wonder, Dr. Silkworth brought us the problem, a non-alcoholic. Look who's bringing us the solution. Here it is, a non-alcoholic. Carl Jung actually introduced the solution to Alcoholics Anonymous. He didn't know how to get there, but he knew what the solution was, and here it is. They appear to be in nature of a huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Remember Bill's story? That pretty much describes what happened to him in that hospital, wasn't it? Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. If you want to know what a spiritual experience is, a spiritual awakening, that is what they're talking about, right there. That's the definition of it. In fact, I've been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement with you. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful. He was really good with the hard drinker. He did not have any success with that chronic alcoholic. He says, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. And there it is. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctor telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. Interesting thought, isn't it? It just wasn't enough. There was something more that needed to be added to it. It says, here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which, as we have already told you, made him a free man. We in turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of a drowning man. People talk about willingness in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'll give you a better word. Someone who's willing is a great thing, but there's nothing finer than walking up and finding someone who's desperate. Because what does a desperate man do? Anything. What's the most dangerous situation you can put yourself in? Go try to save a drowning man. A drowning man does not ask you if you can swim, nor does he ask you if you've ever done this before. A drowning man climbs you like a ladder. Why? Because they're desperate for air. Think about it. A dying man desperately trying not to drink, will do anything to not drink again. How about that? But look at this. It says, what seemed at first a flimsy read. Someone handing you this book and saying, do what's inside this book and it will solve the problem that has been baffling you for all these years. That's a pretty flimsy read, isn't it? Most of us are going, how is this going to help? if you get gut level honest with it. Seems like a pretty flimsy read, doesn't it? But let's see where it takes us. It says, it has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. How about that? I got a way to live and not drink. A design for living that works. The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways in which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there is only one way by which faith can be acquired. We're right back to the we have no monopoly. They told us earlier on in the forward of the second edition. It says, if what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means that all of us, not just some of us, but all of us, whatever our race, creed, or color, are the children of a living Creator with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms as soon as we are willing and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. This thing does not conflict with any faith or religion. None. It says there is no friction among us over such matters. We think it no concern of our religious bodies, I'll get this out. We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should remain entirely a personal affair which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. And here's the thing. If you look at this, religion is a wonderful thing. But you notice what they told us? This is personal to each and every one of us. And this isn't a place to be talking about it. Could you imagine if I started talking about Christianity, and there's a Jewish person over here, and a Muslim over here? What happens? All of a sudden, I'm separating the room, aren't I? All we're talking about is the power that is going to save you, and it's personal to you. And as long as we keep that, we will always be inclusive and never exclusive. How about it? It's all personal to our own affairs. Whatever your faith may be, that's a personal affair of yours. And it doesn't deter you from joining us. It says in the following chapter, there appears an explanation of alcoholism as we understood it. Then a chapter that addresses the agnostic. Many who were once in this class are among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. If you want to know what the best kept secret in Alcoholics Anonymous is, here it is. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we have recovered. How about that? You mean they're going to tell us exactly what to do? What a wonderful secret. It says, they are followed by 42 personal experiences. Each individual in the personal stories describes in his own language, from his own point of view, the way he established his relationship with God. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea of what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need, I love that word, will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems that we'll be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of them too. I must have this thing. What a great chapter, huh? I love this book.
We'll take a little break, and we'll come back with chapter 3.